Hello everybody, how you doing? Today I'm gonna be doing something a little bit different. I didn't really feel like not playing, yeah, actually playing a video game today. So, essentially, today I'll be doing a version of something I've been wanting to do for a while. If you've been here and know, I've been wanting to do a storytelling stream for a hot minute now. But it was gonna be, fairy tales and whatnot. Well, I had the idea the other day. Why not just do that, but not have it be, fairy tales? So essentially, what I'm going to be doing today is just chilling out and reading horror stories that I found on the internet. Okay? And I'll be doing that for about 3 hours. So, get comfy, get a drink, maybe a snack or two, and sit back and relax because here we go. Okay. So I'm doing shit. Okay, I'm ready now. Okay. And by the way, all credit goes to the No Sleep subreddit. I'm just gonna be reading off it for a while, but I had enough to digress. Let's go. I just found my wife outside. I'm sitting here freaking out. It's 3:17 a.m. and I just found my wife outside. This is going to be a mess, as I'm still shaking, but let me explain it as best I can. So a bunch of years ago, we lived in another house. One night, I woke up in the middle of the night because I heard noises coming from the other half of the house. I quickly, I quietly opened the bedroom door and immediately saw a light on in my wife's study, which was situated next to the kitchen. The house we lived in was a few blocks away from the bad neighborhood, so my immediate thought was that someone had broken in and was going through the stuff in my wife's room. I can't fucking read. As my wife had come to bed with me several hours prior, and as far as I knew, she was still in bed. I crept through the house and was ready to confront the person in the room, when I realized that it was my wife. In my still half-sleep state, I just assumed she was still in bed. Turned out she had woken up, couldn't get back to sleep, so she went to her room to browse Facebook or whatever for a while. I had almost confronted my own wife thinking she was a burglar. Now, in our current house, we have a screen door and a wooden door. The wooden door has a deadbolt on it, and you have to make sure that you take the house keys with you, because if you close the wooden door, you're not getting back in unless you grab the hidden spare key or knock on the door slash window to be let in. So it's about an hour ago. I woke up by the front door rattling. I immediately grabbed my phone and pulled the security camera located right by the front door. To my surprise, I see my wife standing there, kinda shivering. It's definitely her. Because we've been married over a decade, I know what my own wife looks like. She's dressed in the same clothing she wore today, a red top and black pants. 100% her. I don't know what she's doing outside, but she is. Confused, I roll over, and there's my wife, fast asleep. Remembering the incident in our last place, I used my phone screen to shine a light on her and confirm that's definitely her and she's definitely in the bed. At this point, I'm really confused. I get up and make my way through the house to the front door. As I walk into our lounge room, our cat looks up at me, half asleep. Normally she's super curious about stuff going on outside, and I would have thought that hearing the screen door rattling would have caused her to be at the door trying to see what's going on, but she hasn't heard a thing. I stand by the door and call out, "Who is it?" "It's me. Hurry up and let me back in. I'm freezing. I went outside because I heard something but forgot to take the keys in my bag with me." That absolutely sounded like my wife. Accent, indentation, knowledge about where her set of keys are, everything. But I'm not convinced. because I've just seen her sleeping in bed with my own eyes. Hold on a second, I tell her. Now I'm heading back through the house and into the bathroom. I wake up my wife and say, "This is really fucking weird. You have to see this." I open up the camera app and show her the front door. She's still at the door, looking around, wondering what I'm doing because all I need to do to let her in is turn the handle of the deadbolt and open the door. My wife says, "What the fuck? When was that recorded?" I tell her, "It's not. This is live. You're standing outside by the front door. I just went down there and asked who it was. And your voice told me it was you and that I should let you back in because you're freezing and you left your keys in your bag." My wife gets up and peers through the bedroom window. As you can see, the front door, a clove. From there, she gasps and pulls the curtain shut. She turns around and I'll never forget the look on her face as long as I live. She's terrified. "That's me," she says. At this point, I'm freaked the fuck out. I'm right awake, I'm speaking to my wife, and I'm physically touching her, while trying to peer out the window with her. But there she is, standing outside in the very outfit she wore today. Same hair, same glasses, same everything. We walk into the lounge room, and I grab the big torch I have. It's a big, sturdy metal super bright light, great for blinding people and hitting them if they get too close. We stand by the door again. "What's your name?" I ask. She tells me her full name including her middle name. It's correct. "What's your birth date?" She tells me. It's also correct. "What did we have for dinner tonight?" She tells me this too, and tells me that I cooked. I cooked it. This is right too. I can hear my real wife saying next to me, trying to control her breathing, as she's scared out of her wits. I nudge her and whisper, "Ask her something only you would know." After a moment to steady herself and think of something, she speaks. "When we last stayed with my parents, what change had Dad made to my old room?" There was a pause. "Who is that?" The person has said. "Why aren't you letting me in? You know it's me. You're starting to freak me out here. Who's that inside with you? Is that a recording of me? What's going on here?" I said, "Answer the question. What change had been made to your room when we last visited?" Another pause, and finally, there was a second bed added, as Max and Damien, my brother-in-law's two kids, sleep there while visiting Mom and Dad. There's an audible gasp from my wife next to me. Now we're both freaked out. I grab her hand and lead her into the bedroom and turn on the lights. We're still awake, watching the cameras. The other person walked towards the backyard, presumably to grab the spare key. But that was about 40 minutes ago, and I haven't seen them since. I'm too shit scared to go to bed, because I'm scared that this person, who knew everything about my wife, would find the spare key and enter. I don't know who the fuck they really are, or what they want, but I'm not sleeping. Okay? Okay. Pretty good, not gonna lie to you. Pretty good. I like. Let me get a drink of water real quick. Sorry. There we go. Dylan's diary. Someone we didn't know tried to pick Dylan up from school today, said his elementary teacher. The guy said he was Dylan's older brother. Dylan doesn't have an older brother, I said, alarmed. We thought so too, replied the teacher. I suspect something wasn't right straight away. It was this tall, lanky guy with black hair, who looked in his late 30s, maybe even 40. He knew your address, Dylan's full name, and birthday, and which class he was in. I went inside to check with the principal. When I came back out, the guy was gone. I was silent for a second. as I stood facing the teacher outside the school gate. The gate separated the main road and a large playground and basketball court leading into the school. All the other kids and parents had left, and we were the only ones standing outside. "Where's Dylan now?" I asked. "He's waiting for you in the principal's office," she said, gesturing for me to follow as she turned around. I walked across the playground behind her, shakily, then through the corridors to the office. My 8-year-old son Dylan sat on the couch in the principal's office, still as a stone. The principal sat behind her desk, and there was a cop standing next to her. "Hey, buddy," I said. "You okay?" Dylan looked at me blankly. My Dylan was always a quiet boy. It was just the two of us at home at the time. I was a single dad. My late wife, Angie, Dylan's mother, died a year prior. She'd been hit by a car while cycling around a sharp bend, and they never identified the driver. I won't go into any more detail here, as it frankly I really not relive that period. But safe to say, it destroyed me. I tried to pick up the pieces and stay strong for Dylan. I was doing a good job, only God knows. I received no feedback. Since then, Dylan became even more withdrawn, pretty much remaining silent until spoken to. He was seen by a child psychologist and various other members of the welfare team at school. But after the assessment, they were sure he didn't have autism or the like. He could speak up when he was pressed. He was just shy and preferred to keep to himself. The cop confirmed I was Dylan's dad, then asked me a few questions. He finally told us they'd try and find the guy and to report if we ever saw him again. The principal and teacher said a few things. It was a blur. All I remember is sweating profusely with my knees shaking, trying to comprehend the fact that someone had tried to kidnap my son. "Dylan, you didn't know that man, did you?" asked the principal. Dylan shook his head. I was on edge after that day. Dylan was my whole world, all the family I had left, and I couldn't stand the possibility that he could be in danger. It made me sick. Who was this bastard? Why my son? Did he know us, or was it some random creep? I always walked Dylan to and from school thereafter. He was never late to pick him up again. Meanwhile, Dylan himself didn't seem rattled in the slightest. He never mentioned the incident unless specifically asked. At the time, I thought he was just timid and didn't want to cause trouble. A couple of weeks later, after the incident, the same homeroom teacher called me during her lunch break. She said one of the kids in her class saw Dylan talking to a man through the school fence. When she rushed out, the man was gone. When Dylan was asked about it, he said he hadn't been talking to anybody. The girl who apparently spotted him was questioned further, and she was adamant that she saw Dylan talking to a tall, lanky man with messy black hair. The cops were called again, did a quick search of the perimeter of the school, but they found no one suspicious. That afternoon, I sat Dylan down at the kitchen table. "I won't get angry. I just need you to tell me the truth," I said, trying to steady my nerves. "Did you or didn't you talk to a stranger today at school? Yes or no?" He shrugged. Getting an answer out of him was harder than drawing blood from a stone. "How many times have we told you not to talk to strangers? It's for your own safety. You do understand that, don't you, son?" He nodded, looking slightly afraid. I realized I had raised my voice and felt guilty immediately. Exasperated and running on 2 hours of sleep, I left him at the dining table and went straight to bed. That night, I woke up at 2 a.m. and went for a bathroom trip. I decided to check on Dylan while I was at it. He wasn't in his room. I called out his name and looked around in the living room and kitchen, getting more frantic as the seconds ticked by. I checked wardrobes, corners, even the cupboards, which made no sense to look in as he never fit in them. But I was desperate. Thinking he'd been kidnapped, I went out into the street, yelling his name as I ran up and down like a maniac, to no avail. As I came back into the house ready to call the police, I looked in Dylan's room for one last check. He was sitting up on his bed, wide awake and staring at me. "Where were you?" I asked, relieved but still alarmed. "I was here," he replied. "No, you weren't. I was looking everywhere for you, and you weren't in here." I was. Had I imagined all of that? I shook my head, feeling a migraine coming on. "Just stay in your room, okay? Don't scare me." I thought my eyes had deceived me somehow, and the paranoia was getting to me. Perhaps I should have paid attention to the fact that the window was wide open. About a year after those incidents, I heard a knock at my apartment door. I was inside doing some paperwork while Dylan was in his room playing Minecraft. I was on alarm immediately. No one ever knocked on the door. We lived in a block of apartments, and friends or acquaintances would always wait outside the main door, ring the doorbell, and I would greet them downstairs. This meant it was likely an upstairs or downstairs neighbor who needed something. I had a few of the numbers from when we moved in, for contact should the need ever arise. But we weren't close at all. I was wondering what could be the problem. I walked up to the door and looked outside the people. There was no one there. Odd, I thought. Perhaps I had heard something. Those random occurrences were commonplace now, and second guessing myself was just in my nature at this point. As I walked back to my desk in the living room, I heard another knock. Something was up. I walked up to the door again. No one seen through the people. Was someone pranking us? I stood just behind the door and texted my upstairs neighbor, asking him if he'd knocked on the door. A few moments later, I heard footsteps upstairs that went in the direction of the door, then hurried back into the apartment. I then received a text back about a minute later. "Do not open the door. There's a guy with a huge knife crouching right next to your door." My phone buzzed again. Another text from my upstairs neighbor. "Calling cops right now. Stay inside." I froze. All the hairs on the back of my neck stood up. I was paralyzed for a few seconds. When I came to my senses, I tiptoed to Dylan's room. "Stay inside. Keep quiet," I whispered, my eyes bulging, beads of sweat dripping down my forehead. I had never felt my heart beat so fast. Dylan looked up and raised his eyebrows as I shut his door slowly and stood outside of it. I felt to throw up and shit myself at the same time. We were so still that I could make out quiet but frantic talking upstairs, and more rushing footsteps. I read my upstairs neighbor's text again to make sure my eyes hadn't deceived me. I tiptoed to the kitchen and grabbed one of my own kitchen knives, then returned to the same spot outside Dylan's room. Anticipating a crazed psycho bursting down the door any second, I chanted manic prayers for safety on repeat in my head. Not a sound came from inside his room. After what seemed like years, I heard sirens in the distance, and my heart rate started to slow a little. My grip on the knife handle loosened. Eventually, I heard someone shouting. More footsteps and banging that gradually faded in volume. "This is the police!" shouted a voice. I looked at the people to confirm that it was a cop, then opened the door, knife still in hand. They were very reassuring and informed us that a tall, lanky man with black hair had just been apprehended and taken into police custody. He had knocked on my door and was waiting for someone inside to open it. He was indeed waiting with a freshly sharpened knife. What was he going to do with it? To the first person who opened the door, which was going to be me. Well, if it wasn't obvious, then your guess is as good as mine. This guy's name was Gregory. He seemed to bounce from place to place with no permanent address, even traveling between states, and doing petty crimes like theft, harassment, and occasionally stalking minors. When they did a more thorough search, it turns out he had been involved in at least one gruesome murder in a different state, and ended up being given a life sentence for it, along with his accomplices. I wouldn't have wished that terror upon anyone. But these unfortunate things happen. The side effects of the psychological damage I experienced that day have never left me. However, I know people who have been through similar horrors, but never live to tell the tale. So, I looked on the bright side and counted myself lucky. Where there are sick freaks, there will be victims. The sicko was in jail, and I thought that was the end of it. But there's a different side to the story that I only uncovered 10 years after the incident. Dylan was due to leave for college, living away from home for the first time. He had grown into a tall kid with a surprising number of friends, still obedient but restlessly quiet. While packing his things and clearing out his room, I found a rugged looking old notebook at the back of the bottom drawer. Dylan's diary, said the cover. I flicked through it with no intention to pry intentionally, and saw that he had written and drawn in it extensively, with impressively neat handwriting. He had always been a boy of few words, so I was intrigued. I began from the first page. Page 1. Cody's house, 11 a.m. He has to give me my coat back. There's a few stick drawings. Page 2. I need a book for English class next week. Ask if Amy has one. I turned the pages, and the first few were filled with the same Monday elementary school day-to-day affairs, mixed in with a few doodles. Then I got to page 21. Page 21. Why does my dad talk so much? He won't even let me get an Xbox, and he won't let me sleep over at Cody's house. Talking back is no use. I hate him. I felt a sting, and my heart sank. I remember that day vividly, and a pang of guilt ran through me. I turned the page. I saw Greg today. He says he can help me get rid of Dad. I said he was lying, but he says he's done it before. It's in the news. As my mind connected the dots, I flicked through the previous page. This is the first mention of Greg I could find. I started to sweat, but continued reading. Me and Greg are kind of a plan. Need Dad gone. But I almost got caught talking to him today. Miss Watford, that stupid old mole rat, keeps asking me. She took me to the principal's office again. I think Caddy saw Greg and snitched. Need to be careful. A few blank pages with a few in between with scribbles and admin type notes to self. Then the narrative continued. The word plan was underlined, with two drawings underneath. The first was a stick figure kneeling by a door, holding what looked like a dagger. This stick figure was smiling. There was another stick figure behind the door, with its hand on the doorknob, about to open the door. The second was of the first stick figure stabbing the stick man who had just opened the door. His eyes now two crosses. Greg came to my house, and I showed him my plan. He said it was good, and he could do it. We almost got caught by Dad, but I got back in bed just in time. He's gonna get some tools from his house. Close one. Page 43. Greg screwed up. He's in jail now. Why did Dad not open the door when Greg knocked? Everything went wrong. I don't know why. Page 44. I wish my dad would just shut up. I flicked through the rest of the notebook, which was blank. Page 44 was the last entry. I read the entries a few times and pondered what should I do. I never thought Dylan was capable of such horrendous intentions. Confused and upset, I acted as if nothing had happened for a few days. But on the day he was due to leave for college, I couldn't hold it in anymore. I brought his duffel bag down and hooked it on his suitcase. He was ready to head to the station, standing outside the door with his suitcase and his backpack. Dylan, when you were younger, did I ever do anything that hurt you? You can be honest with me. No. Why do you ask? He replied. I held the diary. He froze for a second, and I saw the color drain from his face. I won't blame you for anything. Don't worry. You know I love you very much, son. You were a minor, and you were a victim of a very sick man. Besides, this thing is years old. I just want to know what I did wrong at the time to lead to this, and we can put it behind us. His shocked expression faded, leaving his ever-present blank stare. You didn't do anything wrong. Neither did Mom. I opened my mouth to ask him what he meant by that, but stopped. The corners of his mouth stretched into a wide smile. Our eyes met and we stood in silence for a few seconds. Dylan, if I were to find another one of these notebooks, I began tactfully, would I see the blueprint of my wife's murder inside? Yeah. He didn't even pause to answer. He then gripped the handle of his suitcase and walked down the street. That was 2 years ago now. I never forgave him. Every night I still lie awake thinking whether he was born that way or it's somehow my fault. We haven't talked since he left that day, and he hasn't come back home. He never tried to contact me, and I haven't likewise. He looks like he's doing well in college from his Facebook post. He seems to have a lot of friends, so I assume he got his own place or stays with one of them. I wonder if any of them will ever find out who he really is. Wouldn't blame them if they never do. After all, I still don't know who my own son is, and I raised him for 18 years. Okay, pretty good. Once again, drink of water because that really dried my fucking throat out. Every boyfriend I get is brutally dying. Cigarette. Once I was in the woods, I've seen his eyes looking directly at me. They whispered my name. Thank you, cigarette. Thank you. Very nice. Every boyfriend I get is brutally dying. Now, I know the truth about them. And me. It's me, Brianna. Not you. That's what my latest boyfriend told me. Before walking directly into the path of a truck. There is barely anything, and I can't move. There's barely anything of him, just enough to peel off the sidewalk. I thought our relationship was going well. It's not like I'm desensitized to my boyfriend's dying or ceasing to exist, but it's almost become the norm. Thank you, cigarette. I appreciate you. Ben was my first boyfriend in high school, and my longest relationship to date. Fluffy-haired Ben with his dimpled grin and freckles. He was the type of guy who should have been popular, but chose to keep to himself. I met him in the principal's office. Ben was being lectured for sneaking around, and I was handling in a late assignment. All he did was wink at me, and I fell. Hard. Can't believe another 18. Thank you, cigarette. Thank you. We dated for 2 years, and I really thought he was the one. Ben told me he loved me, and every Friday he introduced me to a new restaurant. I was in love. I loved everything about him. On the night before our senior prom, a drunk driver T-boned my boyfriend's car, killing him instantly. After his funeral, it's like he stopped existing. His parents left town, and every time I mentioned him, my parents would slowly tilt their head and act confused when I brought him up. My brother was the worst for it, considering he and Ben were best friends. But he just looked at me with this weird fucking look in his eye, like his soul had been ripped out. Eyes are the window to the soul, apparently, and my brother's soul was MIA. Ben, his expression crumbled. Wait, who? Alex was my emotional support, who later became someone closer. Funny, Alex. Blonde, but not quite blonde Alex. I met him in group therapy. My boyfriend was dead, and he had just lost his mother. We didn't label it because he had a girlfriend, and I didn't want to move on so quickly. I think we just found comfort in each other. Eventually, though, Alex became something I wanted to label. His sense of humor was a breath of fresh air. I didn't go to college because of Ben's death, settling for a mediocre barista shop in town. Alex came in every day with fresh coffee and a sugar cookie. I think I loved him. I told him that, half asleep. I told him I wanted to try and be something more of him. Alex looked taken aback, but happy. We spent the night together. The morning after, I woke my mother screaming. Alex was dead in the bathroom, his blood splattering, staining pristine white. According to the first responder, he died of a self-inflicted head injury. The same exact thing followed. I attended his funeral, and Alex's family disappeared. This time, I went back to his house. But according to the neighbor, his house had been abandoned for 10 years. I had eaten pancakes in his kitchen just earlier. I broke in to see myself, but the neighbor is right. The hallway was piled with ancient mail and threats of eviction. Alex's room didn't exist. Instead, a storage room filled with boxes. When I got home, my family had already forgotten Alex's existence. The town had forgotten him, and yet his blood still stained my bathroom. Following Alex's death, I was terrified of getting close to people, but Esme made it hard. She was my third relationship. We met at a bar. I was extremely drunk and convinced I was cursed to kill all of my romantic partners. Esme. Cute Esme, crooked teeth and smudged lipstick, and warm Esme. Did you know that the person you meet and instantly connect with them, the person you're sure is your soulmate, that was Esme. I told myself I wouldn't get close to her, but I was already talking to this girl, already pouring my life out to her. Esme sat and listened, her chin resting on her fist. She was a first-year creative writing student. She had a cat called Peanut. I didn't remember much after that. We hit it off, and next thing I know, we're curled up in the back of her car, watching Buffy on her iPad. I told her about my exes, and she nodded and smiled, but I don't think she was listening. I told her all of my exes had died, and had been erased from existence. Esme called me too. She wanted to base a story around that concept, sitting up and grabbing her phone. I have this memory of the girl I fell in love with at first sight. She's nodding along to a Smith song, splurting from the car radio. Typing on her phone, I can hear the tapping of her nails, her lips curving into a smile. I can see the exact moment she gets inspiration. Pulling her knees to her chest, she's wearing fishnet tights that are torn, and a jacket that doesn't fit her. She is fucking beautiful, and I don't want to lose her. Alex was beautiful. He had pretty eyes and brown curls that I liked running my hands through. Ben was beautiful. He made my heart swim and my stomach swarm with butterflies when I first met him. Ben was my first love. The realization woke me up one night. 3 months into dating Esme, both of them were dead. Wiped away like they never existed. And Esme would follow. At first, I tried to break it off with her without sounding crazy. I told her it was me, not her, and I wasn't in the mindset for a relationship. Esme understood, but her eyes didn't. I didn't want to lose her. Esme lit up every room she entered. Her obsession with thrifted clothes and badly written poems and her irrational fear of pandas made her someone I wanted to be with. So I stayed with her. I told myself Ben and Alex were just coincidences, and that they were nothing to do with me, and I wasn't indirectly fucking killing the people I fell in love with. I avoided the L word for as long as I could, but it slipped out on my way to work. Esme was driving. I just said it, and her eyes lit up. She reached out and squeezed my hand. At work, one of my colleagues, Jasper, caught my eye. When I just stood around to ask him to grab something, I glimpsed his phone screen. It looked like Tinder, though I didn't recognize the layout. It reminded me of Twitter in dark mode. Jasper was leaning against the counter, his his thumb hovering over a photo of Esme, chewing his bottom lip. I watched his thumb prance across the screen before he gave up and swiped left. Finishing up the woman's coffee, I handed it over. Uh, I asked for cream. Ignoring her, I slid in front of my colleague, hyper-focused on whatever app he was playing with. What's that? Jasper looked up, his eyes wandering, lips parting like a fucking goldfish. Clearly nothing. Jasper sidestepped me, opening the refrigerator and pulling out milk. But he already had milk. The bastard was stalling. We had 0 customers waiting, so it was the two of us, and a long, dragged-out pause. Jumping up and down on the heels of his feet, he shot me as usual again, slipping his phone in his apron. Jasper may have been smiling, though there was something inside his expression I couldn't stop myself. Was that a dating app? Dating app? Excuse me, can I get what I ordered? The woman demanded, waving her coffee in the air. I asked for whipped cream. Jasper saw that as an excuse, an escape, and nodded, flashing a grin. He saw an opportunity and took it. Of course, ma'am. I'll get that for you, he said with a little too much sarcasm. The boy took her coffee with a spring in his step, ducking it in the refrigerator for the whipped cream. Jasper added too much whipped cream, dumping the drink on the counter with a little too much force. It was a good thing my colleague was a marginally attractive guy with cropped blonde hair and a deadpan voice that somehow attracted the ladies. Jasper could insult someone directly to the face and they would just blush and get all tongue-tied. I had seen it happen in real time. A girl was flirting with him and used a bad pickup line, which was something along the lines of, "Did it hurt when you fell from heaven?" He laughed, her eyes brightened, she giggled along with him, nudging her friends. But he wasn't laughing with her. I saw the gleam in his eye. He was laughing at her. Still laughing, Jasper plucked her milk latte down so hard, half of it spewed out. At that exact same charming smile, he deadpanned. "Did it hurt when you dropped out the drip pan?" Yeah, my colleague was blessed with good looks. Otherwise, he would have been a punch in the face by now. Presently, he was being his usual asshole self. "Is there anything else I can get for you?" The woman shook her head, pulling a face. Jasper had, essentially, ruined her drink. It was more cream than coffee. When she left the store, I situated myself in front of him when he was counting cash. "What were you just looking at?" I nodded to the guy's phone sticking out of his pocket. "Was it like a dating thing you're on?" Jasper didn't even look at me, his lips curling. "Kinda rude," he hummed. "I don't peek at your phone." Esme Hope was all I could hiss out. Was she on that dating app? My colleague proceeded to stare at me like I had grown a second head, before his half-lidded gaze flicked behind me. Jasper's expression brightened. "Oh, Hannah is calling me," he said. Choking out a laugh, Hannah was not calling him. She was in the break room getting high. Jasper slowly backed away, maintaining a smile. "I'll be back in a second, alright?" He grabbed that same carton of milk with a grin. "Don't you just love when your milk stays fresh?" "What?" "Fresh milk," he grinned. "Mulberry Farm's finest." Jasper was darting away before I could cohere a sentence. After work, I tested Esme as usual. She was my ride on Fridays. Esme didn't reply. I texted her again, a little more panicked. "Hey, are you okay?" When I called her, an automated voice told me she wasn't available. Already feeling sick to my stomach, I drove to her place myself. I could see the flashing lights before anyone else, blurred red and blue, sending my thoughts into a whirlwind. It took me 10 minutes to muster the courage to jump out my car and ask a pale-looking deputy what was going on. I tried to jump over the yellow tape, only to be politely pulled back. "Carbon monoxide poisoning," the deputy told me. "The whole family is dead." He sighed. "Mom, Dad, and their daughter in college." I think he was trying to be sympathetic, awkwardly patting me, but I was already on my knees. All the breath dragged from my lungs. Luckily, it's just like going to sleep. Monoxide is a silent killer. Monoxide is a silent killer. That was the same as, I'm sorry, Ben was in the wrong place at the wrong time, and Alex was suffering silently. He did what he thought was best. I didn't go to Esme's funeral. Mom and Dad and Will had already forgotten her, just like the others. What I did do 7 days later was when her name wasn't even a memory anymore. Brought flowers from the store. Roses were Esme's favorites. The seller was around my mom's age. A plump-looking woman wearing a floral dress, long red hair tied into a ponytail. She was on her phone humming to a tune on the radio. The Smiths. I hope she likes them, the woman said, wrapping the flowers in red ribbons. She had a strong southern accent that immediately annoyed me. I took the roses, stuck them in my bag. What did you say? The seller crooked her head. How did you know they were for my girlfriend? The woman sighed, placing her phone on the counter. I glanced at whatever she was so interested in, but the screen was face down. Esme came in here a lot. Her lips broke into a sad, sympathetic smile. I was growing sick of them. Esme, she told me you guys were dating. Esme was always buying roses for her room. Sometimes she would stand in here for hours and just stare at the flowers. I think she found comfort in them. The woman sighed, fixed me with what I could only describe as a pitiful pout. Ugh. I hope we can find the same comfort, she murmured. The seller handed me an extra rose, and I found myself reaching out for it, my eyes stinging. Fuck. I hadn't cracked in at least 15 hours, and that was a record. But now I could feel myself splintering tears trickling down my cheeks. The flower lady squeezed my hand. I'm sorry, sweetheart. If it makes you feel any better, it's just like going to sleep. Monoxide is a silent killer. Her words were familiar. Exactly what the deputy said. Before I could speak, she dumped weed killer on the counter. Did you know our plant killer is $10.99? Her sudden bout of energy took me off guard. I tried to smile. I don't want any plant killer. She nodded, handed me another rose. Oh, of course, darling, but it's just $5.99, just for today. Something pricked me. I hissed out, wafting my hand. Damn thorns. I could hardly see a single spot of blood. I nodded, sucking my teeth against the cry. Thanks, but I'll skip this time. I took the roses to what used to be Esme's grave. Now it was an empty headstone with no name, no memories, no flowers. Nothing. Just like Alex and Ben. Esme had been reduced to dirt under my feet. I stayed at her grave for a long time. Long enough for the sky to grow dark, and my thoughts darker. I tried to find a logical explanation for the sudden deaths of the people I got close to, but all I could think of was a curse. So I started Googling curses, throwing it against Esma's headstone, my knees to my chest. Had I been cursed? Was I family cursed? According to Google, a cursed object connected with the curse itself, which could be anything. Though I didn't remember visiting any ancient ruins or old churches. With zero answers, I headed home. I passed a guy playing The Smiths in his car. Then a group of old women wearing ribbed fishnets as he was following me. It's like Alex's smell, fresh coffee and rich chocolate. Ben's cologne filled my car last summer. His favorite band was playing all day on our local music station. I drove around with no destination, listening to each one on repeat, until I was losing him all over again. The sweet aroma of flowers followed me all the way home, and I was tipsy on the smell. When I found myself face to face with a boy, under the overexposed streetlight, this guy was almost ethereal. Thick brown hair and freckles. He reminded me of Ben, which wasn't fair. I thought I was hallucinating him before he came closer. Leading from the shadow, I saw more of him. White stripes of something wrapped around his head. Wrong. The words slammed into me when I glimpsed his clothes. Filthy. The guy was wearing a white button-down, a single streak of bright red ingrained into the material. His white pants were torn, glued to his legs. He was barefoot, the soles of his feet slapping on wet concrete. I didn't realize he was in front of me, nose to nose, until he shoved me. Hard. Josie. His voice was a whimper, just by his narrowed eyes and lips twisted into a scowl. He was crying, and had been crying. Every heaving sun spurted from his mouth. The boy shoved me again, and I staggered. His ice-cold breath grazed my cheeks. What the fuck did you do to my sister? Sister? I whispered. Something wet landed on my cheek suddenly. Rain. I wasn't expecting a downpour. The weather was forecast to be clear. To my surprise, the guy let out a harsh, sounding laugh. The two of us were slowly getting drenched, but neither of us were making a move to get out of the rain. My hair was glued to the back of my neck, my clothing sticking to me, but somehow I wanted to stay in the rain. It was refreshing. When a thought hit me, telling me to get out of the rain. It was shut to the back of my mind. The guy spat water out of his mouth, shaking his head like a dog. Of course, he muttered. Drown me out with the rain. I found my voice, and gaze glued to intense red seeping through the bandage stapled to his head. He looked like he had escaped an emergency room. I don't know anyone called Josie, I said. I think you got the wrong person. The guy's eyes narrowed. He stepped closer, grabbing my shoulders, and noticed how hollow his eyes are. Empty caverns carved into his skull. Eyes are the windows to the soul, and this guy was completely soulless. I'm gonna say this once, he whispered. What did you do to my sister? Before I could respond, the guy was being violently grabbed and dragged back. Figures who appeared seemingly out of nowhere. Let me go, he cried out, struggling. You fucking assholes, let me go! His screaming became muffled, and his cries were gagged. You promised, he cried, gasping and collapsing into a sob. You said if you took me, she wouldn't get hurt. So where is she? He met my gaze, his expression crumbling, something inside him coming apart, splintering by the seams. You can't take both of us. That wasn't in the agreement. When he was dragged further back, I noticed a car, parked at the side of the road. The boy was pulled inside. At first, he refused, before an extra pair of hands shoved him. You fucking... I heard his fist slamming into the windows. Don't take me back there. Please, just let Josie... His cry was again collapsed into an angry, muffled screaming. And I found my hands moving towards my pocket for my phone. This was a kidnapping, right? I was witnessing a kidnapping in broad fucking daylight. A shadow was suddenly in front of me, and I jumped. Tearing my eyes from the car, Jasper, my colleague, he was still wearing his apron, and to my confusion, was swinging a carton of whole milk. Sorry, Bree. He winked, speaking in a single breath. As you can see here, our friend had a little too much to drink. I nodded, craning my neck. Jasper stepped in front of me, maintaining a grin. Who is he? I said. This time, I sidestepped away from him, only for him to copy. Just a guy, he said. As you can see, he's a little... Jasper pointed to his right temple. Let's say he's got a few too many screws loose. Jasper laughed, saying stock skill, blocking my way. When I made a move to counter him, he stepped in front of me, his eyes hardening. I hear he lost his family a while ago and, he pretended to think, oh yeah, a car crash. Maybe a gas explosion? I'm not really sure. I could hear the car behind him. and once again I tried to dart past him, but he was quick to block my way. He was getting closer to me, and very subtly backing me in the opposite direction. Anyway, this guy is kinda nuts. Dude still thinks he's got a sister. When I lost patience and shoved him out the way, the car and the guy was gone. See? Jasper rolled his eyes. He was still holding milk from work. My head spun. It was 8 p.m. We were in a suburban neighborhood, and Jasper was holding half a pint of milk. His apron was stained with coffee, and when I really looked at him, I realized he was out of breath. He was doing a good job of hiding it, inhaling in intervals, swiping at his forehead to clear sweat. When I noticed, he pretended to run his hand through his hair. I feel for him, like, I'm sorry his family died or whatever, but attacking random girls isn't cool, you know? Instead of replying, I stumbled home. It was sunny. At 8 p.m. And when I took notice, I wasn't even wet. Esme was my last straw. I made a promise myself to not get close to anyone. The guys and girls I met were friends and nothing more. Weirdly enough, though, the only guy I was getting close to was my colleague. I don't know if it was brain damage or if I was finally losing the plot, but Jasper's shameless cruelty towards customers and that quirk in his lips when he made them cry was kinda hot. However, he was playing hard to get, and I mean really playing. I was in storage trying to find vegan milk, and he was suddenly a fucking expert, spewing milk facts. When I slammed the refrigerator door shut, he was inches from my face. In the dim light from the single, sputtering bulb, his eyes reminded me of coffee grounds. I thought maybe he was going to kiss me. Judging from his softening expression, I felt his hands go around my waist, and I felt myself immediately melt. I don't know what came over me. It's like one minute I hated him, and the next, I was suddenly hot. Really hot. And I really wanted to take my clothes off. I thought that's what he wanted to do too. I mean, his gaze followed mine, piercing, fingers playing with the buttons on his shirt, before he leaned forward, his breath in my face. Did you know that Mulberry Farms is an award-winning brand of milk in our own town? And only our town? Mulberry Farms was bred and made right here. And suddenly, I was no longer hot and bothered. I didn't, I said, ducking into a crouch to search the shelves. Have you seen our vegan milk? We did have some. 3-time winner. Jasper continued. When I jumped up, he stepped closer, and I felt my cheeks spark. His smile was rare, in fact. Jasper was only smiling when he was talking about milk. Mulberry Farms with the best pasteurization. It's suitable for everything. Coffee, cereal, or maybe you just want a glass of fresh milk to yourself. Perfect for the kids, too. Breakfast time is Mulberry Farms. Are you having a stroke? I whispered. Nope. Jasper turned around, shooting me a grin. I left the storage, however, with butterflies in my gut. There was no way I was falling for my asshole colleague. Somehow, though, I was. Just staying next to him filled me with electricity. The way he talked down to customers, insulting me to my face. I was thoroughly and disgustingly in love. I tried to stop myself. I showered in ice-cold water. I ate, choked on, a ghost pepper. I even asked my brother for advice, who told me to go for it. I told him Jasper had one of several flaws, but this particular one was off-putting. He's obsessed with milk. I told my brother. Harry looked at the brow. Is that a euphemism or... He paused for way longer than necessary. So your would-be boyfriend has a milk fetish. I left his room before he could take that conversation further. I wanted to say Jasper was the only one who acted weird, but over the next few weeks, I noticed it in quite a few people. I was having breakfast with Mom and she lifted up the box. Choco Flakes, she blurted. Aren't they just the best? I nodded slowly. Yeah, Mom, they're great. I prodded the box with a smile. Only $1.99. There were so many townspeople on their phones. They walked around with groceries or briefcases, their eyes glued to whatever they were swiping through. I was serving an old woman when I caught her phone screen. I could have sworn there was an image of Jasper. She swiped right, and I had a hard time looking her in the eye. The woman was at least in her 80s, and I'm talking can barely walk and needs assistance. Why was she seriously hitting up a 25-year-old? Walking home, everyone was on their phones. I stopped at a crossing, stabbing the red light. It started to snow the second I stepped out onto the road. White flakes dancing in front of me. It didn't even cross my mind that it was almost June. The snow was pretty, accumulating on the ground. Oh shit, sorry! Lifting my head, a guy was standing in front of me, holding an umbrella. I knew him, but not from whatever was trying to move my mind. I knew him from a while ago. I knew him from the rain. I knew the bloody bandages wrapped around his head and soulless, seething eyes. I couldn't understand it. It was the boy who was dragged away 3 months prior. He looked different. His hair was shorter, his face carved into a thing of beauty. The white stripes of gauze, bleeding scarlet, were gone. His filthy clothes replaced with a white shirt and pants, a trench coat flung over top. I didn't remember him being this handsome. His dark brown hair had been tamed and curled. It was his expression that sent shivers sliding down my spine. His too wide smile and unblinking eyes made me suddenly conscious of two bright lights on the two of us. So bright. Something shattered in my mind. I was aware of a lot of things. The snow under my feet was too soft. I glimpsed a single streak of red spewing from his nose, his hands trembling around a take-out coffee cup. Behind me, people were staring. I could see a group of teenage girls giggling. It's him, one of them squeaked. It's the new love interest. Bree? His grin widened, snowflakes prancing around us, his teeth gritted together. I could tell that he hated every word. Holy shit! Long time no see! He held out his hand. I could see visible pain contorting in his eyes. Help me! He was screaming through a very twinkling smile. Don't you remember me? It's Sam! He left from 8th grade. The lights blinked out, and the thought crashed into my mind. Static images filling my head. I shook them away. Oh yeah, it was Sam, my childhood friend. But I didn't reply. Instead saying, Sam? It's been so long. I found myself walking, stumbling over to the girls, who were rapidly swiping left on their phones. What's that? I demanded in a sharp breath. I grabbed the phone only for Sam to step in front of me. He settled me with a smile. Behind me, one of the girls fainted. Sam's smile didn't waver, though he did side-eye the girl being carried away. Why don't I take you out for coffee? Apparently, coffee was the code word for hooking up. Sam dragged me to the nearest coffee store, straight to the bathroom. They shoved me into a stall. I didn't know what to say. Take your shoes off, he said in a hiss, and after hesitating, I did. Sam pulled off his jacket, shook snow out of his hair, and got real close. Look up, he murmured. I did, my gaze finding the ceiling. To your right. A camera is very well hidden, but can be seen with the naked eye if you catch what looks like a red laser. Sam said. To your left, another camera, as well as a vent that is currently pumping the stalls with aphrodisiacs. And right now, we are in the red zone, meaning you should be conscious. He prodded me and I flinched. Mostly conscious. His words went right over my head. My mind was foggy. I couldn't think straight. I think I asked him what he was saying, but my mouth filled with cotton. Snap out of it, he said. Like I said, they're making you feel like this. He shoved me against the door, which broke me out of my trance. Slightly. I hate what I'm going to say right now. Sam groaned, tipping his head back. He was sweating, I noticed. Bad. I glimpsed beads of red pooling down his neck. He noticed me staring. I'm okay. For now. I'm faulty, so the connection is severed. He squeezed his eyes shut. I think. What are you talking about? Sex, he said, blinking rapidly. I wasn't going to comment on his slurring voice. Sam stumbled, fresh blood dripping from his nose. We need to do the sex, like... He rolled his eyes to the back of his head, but managed to save himself. Now! What? Is everything okay in there? The voice was a woman. She knocked on the stall. Sam's eyes widened, coming back to life a little bit. They're paranoid, he whispered. When I could only stare at him, he pounded his fist into the door. They think we're fucking, he hissed. So we need to make it believable. They? I mouthed. He didn't reply. Sweeping at his hemorrhaging nose. Just move around against the door. That'll fool them. I did, doing my best to shuffle around, slamming my back against the lock. When the metal clanged, he shot me a look. Sex, he hissed. Not murder. Sam jumped onto the toilet bowl. There was an open window above him. That's enough, he mouthed, holstering his way through. He helped me through, and I expected to land on concrete. What I did land on, however, was something squishy, something wet sliding between my bare toes. Looking closer, I recognized the beaded anklet, fishnet tights. Something animalistic crawled from my throat. I was staying on Esme, or what was left of Esme. She was just a torso and legs. The rest of her body ripped away like doll pieces. I couldn't see her face. I looked for it, digging through what could only be old flesh and pieces of limb. I felt suffocated. I grabbed half of Ben's face that had been ripped off, and then Alex's tattooed arm. There was so much of them. Piles and piles of the same head, the same filthy and rotting clothes. I was screaming by the time I shuffled back onto my hands and knees, trying to wipe them off of my skin. They were all over me, staining me, painting me. Sam's hands slick with blood gently covered my mouth. Stay calm, alright? He whispered. I would tell you everything is going to be okay, but the truth is, it's really not. There's like a 99.9% chance you're going to understandably freak out. He pulled me to my feet, laying out a heavy breath. Blinking rapidly, I could only see pieces of people. Legs and heads and torsos all piled into one mass of gore. We got maybe 5 minutes before they realized we're not doing the devil's dance. Sam sniffled. Maybe 10 before my brain short circuits and I bleed out. I didn't know I was hyperventilating until I couldn't fucking breathe. Closer towards the doors, I could hear machinery. I couldn't stop myself. Even when I was aware I was standing in congealing blood, rotten bodies, the dim light led me to what could only be described as a factory. There were 3 fucking levels, and we were on the highest. Sam stepped forward, gripping the metal bar in front of us. I felt my legs buckling, a thick, pukely slime filling my mouth. So, I guess it all started when Brianna Timmerman was 17 years old and rejected by her childhood best friend, Sam, 20s. Sam's words collapsed in a low buzzing in my ear. All I could see was a conveyor belt full of people. Boys, girls, but most notably, Ben's, Alex, Emma's, and Sam's. They were starting as Ben's, Alex, and Esma's. I could see regular people, their hair stripped away, their skin sliced, cruelty molding them into the exact same four faces, when a large looming needle plunged into the back of Alex's head. I could not watch. I waited for the guy to wake up, but I don't even think he was alive. He stood, unblinking, letting this thing twist and contort his face. And it was then when I realized these things weren't even human. I could see the mechanics built under their flesh, both living tissue and metal melded together. Brianna's father, who was a little on the crazy side with too much cash and not enough logic, took his daughter's rejection a little too personally. Sam continued. So he promised his daughter he would find her the perfect match. I started to speak, the words coming out before I could stop them. My father would never. I didn't say it was your father, Sam said, his eyes darkening. Anyways, as I was saying, the townspeople became unhealthily obsessed with who Brianna would choose. So obsessed, in fact, that the girl's day-to-day life was broadcast across town, while her potential love interests were ranked week after week. First, there was Ben. Sam's smile thinned. Her high school boyfriend. Sam shrugged. She grew bored of him. Also, he kind of something unforgivable. He continued. Then, Alex. She liked him, but sometimes he was a little too unserious. The guy was a clown. I backed away, but he was too quick to grab my shoulders. Finally, Esme, who she truly fell for. I swallowed. Esme is... He cut me off, but I didn't mention that they hurt her, did I? She leaned against the bar, behind him. I could see a figure in white pushing a gurney with a bench strapped to it. Ben tried to R her, insisting she wanted it. Alex dumped her on her birthday. Esme ended their relationship with a one-word text. Goodbye. Sam mimed an explosion. That was a nail in the coffin. I caught blood sliding down his nose. You're still bleeding. Sam gingerly prodded his nose. Yeah, it's an effect of the severing. I've been in the red zone too long. I should probably speed this up. He talked faster, his voice collapsing into a mumbled slur. Brianna couldn't take it. Her best friend was ignoring her. Everyone she had ever fallen in love with hurt her. Esme wasn't returning her calls. Ben was sleeping around right in front of her, and Alex was still being a clown. Brianna's poor parents found her hanging in her bedroom ceiling fan. I shook my head, my thoughts screaming, "No!" He held a finger up to shush me. "Jeez, let me talk." Sam folded his arms. A grieving father would do anything to avenge his child's death, but Mr. Timberman took finding a perfect match and the show must go on a little too literally. His sickly smile found me, which also means going stark fucking crazy. The town wanted more of Brianna and her life, so he turned her daughter's failed love life into a town-wide TV show, sending the entire teen and young adult populace into here. He gestured around him to make perfect suitors who wouldn't hurt his new Brianna. Something ice cold crept down my spine. He cleared his throat. Mr. Timberman grew, let's say, obsessed with getting revenge on these specific 4 people. So he started killing them. He coughed. Sorry, us. Killing us for the funny haha. Look how many times I can fuck with them. Bit. And they're recycling us into someone completely different. Our names are gone, then our personalities. Finally, our bodies ripped into pieces and sculpted into Brianna's exes. Sam poked me in the cheek. The cycle continues. They reset your ticker, and the town eats it up. They can bring back Esme, Ben, and Alex whenever they want, and add curveballs, like the bad boy colleague who becomes the fan favorite. Sam's lips curved for some fucking reason. His eyes flickered open. However, Brianna would never find a suitor because her father is a fucking sociopath. To him and the town, his dead daughter's pathetic love life is entertainment. He held out his hand. See? I tried hard not to look at the makeup, at noticeable skin grafts. I was a Ben, he said. Then I was an Alex. And then I was an extra. His eyes found mine. Sad, suddenly. But who I was originally is kinda gone. All I remember is a deal to protect Josie. I gave myself up so that they wouldn't take her. Your sister, I said. Sam nodded. His earlier words hit me. He was talking like Brianna Timberman was dead, but I was Brianna Timberman. I was rejected by Sam, yes, but I found Ben. As if he could read my mind, Sam shook his head. Look at yourself, he said in his voice shaking. And I mean, really look at yourself. Sam stepped closer, because underneath all of that makeup and the prostheses and surgery and fucked up memories, you're just another recycled lump of flesh. He prodded my temple. Who thinks she is Brianna Timberman? His voice was slurring again, a fresh stream of scarlet seeping down his chin. Don't you want to know? His eyes rolled to pearly white. Before he could finish his sentence, Sam dropped to the ground. I remember warm arms grasping, holding me. Shadows with no faces. They pricked me twice in the back of my neck. A familiar voice in my ear, almost a hiss. Jasper, you are the worst fucking Brianna. And then when I came to, I was staying up, somehow, at work. I am Brianna Timberman. The thought floated in my head, my memory hazy. Hello? A man was waving his hands in front of me. I asked for iced coffee, lady. Jasper was serving another customer. Bree, wake the fuck up. They're trying to make me think I was hallucinating, which was crazy, because my fingernails were still tinted with Sam's blood. The marks he left on my wrist when he was yanking me were still there, bruised on my arm. Bree! Jasper snapped. Snap out of it and make the dude his fucking drink. Right. The words slipped out my mouth. He caught my eye, winking, and Brianna Timberman internally squeaked. I half wonder what he was. Was he recycled or an unwilling performer? Throughout the day, I was fully aware my words were not mine, like I was on autopilot. But not just that, my thoughts weren't mine either. I spent half of my shift staring at my colleagues' biceps. During my break, I went to the bathroom and stood in front of the mirror. I am Brianna Timberman. But even when I told myself that, my eyes were too blue. My smile was too perfect. My teeth too white. My shaking hands prodded at my face, at someone else's face. So many faces. So many skin grafts. The thought was violent, sending tremors through me. How many people was I wearing? I started chewing at my arms, my legs, my face. How many fucking people had I been? I grabbed a knife and tried to slice at my face, but there was no blood. Thank you, anime, thank you. You too, you too. How could there be no blood? When I got home, I found my family waiting for me. Mom, Dad, and Harry. All of them were beaming. Bree, Mom stood up, her lips stretched to a grin. My mouth was already moving. There are not my words. Mom! I didn't know why she was smiling so much until I saw Sam sitting at our dining room table. His smile was too big. His over-expensive shirt and pants did not suit him and looked fucking gross. But somehow my brain thought it was hot. The worst part is, I couldn't and still can't tell which Sam he was. Was he the guy who told me the horrific reality of my existence, or was he just another recycled, mindless suitor? This is Samuel, Mom said, and Sam slowly stood. He took slow steps toward me and kissed my hand. Good night. I can't even hear it, Lord. I'm actually on. Hello. Oh, yeah, sorry about that. My mouse is on the middle of the screen because I'm reading another post, but my mouse is see-through. But thank you, Mr. Top. Yes. Fuck, where was I? Da-da-da-da. I saw the slightest smudge of scarlet in his lip, but his eyes were blank. In the corner of my eye, my father's eyes were glittering. Hello, Brianna, Sam said. I swore now that I was awake. The walls were wolf whistling, laughing. Ooh. My town is a blip on the map. We're so small, so insignificant. Not even a Google search will find us. I keep thinking if I tear at my skin, I will find who I am underneath. But I'm so fucking scared. I don't believe. I don't think who I was still exists under so many layers. But even if this is just a cry to the void, please help me. I don't want to breathe. Brianna Timmerman. Also, fuck you, Velvet. Fuck you. And everything you stand for. Specifically, just you. Fuck you. Hello, Wall. Hello. How you doing, dog? How's it going? What's poppin'? How you doing? How's it going? There you go. There we go. Perfect. Oh, what is it this time? Yeah. Mine isn't good. I'll be right back. You keep arguing amongst yourselves. I gotta go use the restroom because I'm chugging water because this is fucking destroying my throat. Be right back. Hi, Mr. Top. How you doing? It's just been so it's just campfire. So yeah, I think so. Geezer, what stories are you holding? Exactly. I'm just here reading scary stories with a campfire in the background because I didn't exactly want to show my face. Everything just broke, and I have no clue what caused it. Give me 1 second. Hello, what the fuck? There we go. What the fuck happened? I know, I saw the title, yep. Oh, I wasn't talking to you, Mr. Top. I was talking to the people in Twitch chat. I'm multi-streaming right now, sorry. Okay. I feel much better. Sorry, taking a drink. There we go. Well, I don't know. It was mid-December, 1955. Cold, kind of wet, dry. Come on, old man. Oh yeah, it's all good, stop. I'm gonna go to the next story then. You keep doing that, Wall. We'll have two stories at the same time. My cat always leaves the best gifts. On the morning of Mother's Day this year, I received exactly one gift, a dead rat, deposited at my doorstep by my cat, James. James is black and white, slick and elegant, his fur like a tuxedo. If a cat was cast to replace Daniel Craig in the next Bond film, James would be the perfect fit. In fact, the resemblance is how I got his name in the first place. Thank you, James, I said, bending to stroke his fur as we both examined the little rotting carcass on the welcome mat. He looked at me, hopefully as if expecting to take a nibbling of his offering. I'll get to that later. I promise. The rest of the family had forgotten the holiday. Not that I blamed them. My husband Sato was busy at work, pulling 70-hour shifts as he prepared a series of PowerPoints to explain his company's corporate structure to a potential buyer. In the meantime, the twins, June and Lily, were busy with spring soccer and last-minute prep for their upcoming AP test. I spent some time idly making myself coffee while the family slept. Then, around 9, they all flew past Flurry, the twins off to a soccer game and Sato heading to work. It wasn't until they'd all left that a lump began to form in my throat, and I headed to the backyard to have a little cry. I felt silly. It was a made-up holiday after all. Not like Christmas or a birthday, though Sato forgot my birthday this year, too. For a few minutes, I sat on one of the patio chairs, sniffling pathetically. Hopefully, no one returned early to see me like this. I was about to go inside when I saw James. He was over in his corner of the yard, lying in the shade. Right away, I could tell something was off about him. James always slept curled in a ball, his chin resting on his rear haunches. Today, he stretched out, bent awkwardly. Even stranger, he seemed to shimmer in the few spots where the dapple sunlight caught his fur. Slowly, I walked out, clicking my tongue in the way he liked. When he didn't move, I softly called his name. Finally, I reached to touch him, only to find his fur wet. Drawing my hand back, I found it red and bloody in the sunlight, which is when I started to scream. I called Sato. A few minutes later, I need you to come home, I said. James is dead. Your friend James from college? Our cat! I realized I was screaming on into the phone. Our only cat? I could practically hear him roll his eyes on the far end of the line. It's not a good day for this, he said. I can come back a bit early, take care of the body. Just leave it alone for now. I spent many hours alone that day, sitting in the backyard. In time, flies found James and began to lick at him with their little straw mouths, dripping their horrible little hands in his blood and rubbing them together. It was no use shooing them away. I was sunburned raw by the time Sato came home. He looked at me, incredulous. What happened to you? I was standing vigil, I explained. He rubbed at the bridge of his nose. Where's the cat? He asked, and I gestured to the backyard. Every inch of my skin throbbed from the sunburn. But it felt right. Like my inside and outside pain matched in some harmonious way. Sato grabbed a waste bag and started walking towards the backyard. What are you doing? I asked. Taking care of James, he said, trying to use a gentle tone as if explaining to a child that it was time for bed. You'll bury him, I said, at the foot of the maple, 3 feet deep at least. He shook his head. Not even legal, hun. Besides, I was working all day today. I'm I'm exhausted. 3 feet deep, I said. And then I went to the garage to find a shovel. The one I located was unused, though we must have bought it years ago. I bought it in and handed it to Sato. He took it without a word and went outside. An hour later, he came in dirty and sweaty. He headed to the shower. I walked to the fuzzy maple to find the earth there freshly disturbed from digging. Then I found one of James's favorite toys, a fuzzy bird that had once had a bell inside of it, and affixed to a stick, which I placed at the head of the grave. At dinner, the twins showed up, still in their soccer uniforms. They spent the day at the park with friends after the game. Happy Mother's Day, said June, somewhat sheepishly, handing me an envelope with a gift card to Jazzy Juice inside. Thanks, I said. Uh, what's Jazzy Juice? It's a smoothie thing, Lily explained. It's $20. Thank you, I said again, staring at the card. Maybe I was making a face. If you don't want it, I can take it back, said June. My friends and I go there all the time. No, I said. I'll love it. I'm sure I'll love it. Great, she said, looking disappointed. The next morning, I went into the backyard and screamed. James's grave had been dug up. It was nothing put to an empty hole surrounded by a pile of dirt. The stick and toy were missing too. It didn't seem that deep. By the time Sato ran out to see what I was wrong, I was in tears. 3 feet deep, I shouted. 3 feet deep. The soil gets really rocky when you go down that far, he said. I figured it didn't matter. It mattered, I screamed. I decided to take some me time that afternoon. So I headed to Jazzy Juice. I tried to figure out the menu while I was in line, but got overwhelmed by all of the options. Finally, when I got to the front of the line, I asked if I could get a basic orange juice. It'd be more like an orange smoothie, said the girl behind the counter. A thin redhead in her 20s covered in tattoos. Oh, that's no good, I said. I don't really like pulp. No pulp, please. That's not really what we do here, she said. Maybe it's a good idea to try something new. The berry blitz is super popular. I want my orange juice, I said. I was probably a little rude, but I was on my limit. I got a gift card I added for $20. Fine, she said, and then I swear, under her breath, she said, Boomer bitch. Excuse me? She didn't meet my eyes. Instead, she turned and started throwing frozen oranges into a blender. I'm 44. I tried over the noise and she started to blend her. I'm a millennial, maybe Gen X. Finally, she handed me my drink. It was so pulpy, it clogged the straw. She shot me a shade-eating smile. Have a nice day. I chucked my drink in the garbage on the way out. That night, I found myself crying as I tried to make dinner. I could see the little hole that had once contained James's body through the kitchen window. I couldn't help glancing at it as I tried to peel zucchinis. It struck me that James had been the only one in the world who loved me at all. Even worse, it seemed unlikely that no one would ever love me again. I was aging, chubby, and boring. The world didn't wait for me. Without realizing it, I made a deep cut on my thumb and started bleeding everywhere. For a minute, I just watched the blood ooze out of me, all over the vegetables. That night, I heard a thump. I tried to shake Chateau awake, but he was asleep. Finally, I got up and walked downstairs. There was another thump now, louder. Then a series of 3 more thuds right by the front door. Slowly, I grabbed a knife from the kitchen and then walked through the darkness. As I did, I heard a familiar sound. That seemed impossible. It was James' distinctive meow, the little cry he delivered at the door when he wanted my attention, and yet it was somehow different. A lower, deeper, mewing. Hello? I asked as I walked to the door, but there was no sound. I heard footsteps outside. Not a cat, but something bigger? Maybe human. This story is long. Yes, yes it is. Finally, I reached the door and slowly turned the knob. I opened it just a crack, peeking through it to see if someone was outside. But at first, I saw no one, just the empty street in the moonlight. A few night blooming flowers had opened their petals, but otherwise, the neighborhood looked dull and lifeless. Then I looked down and I had to stifle a scream. On my doorstep lay a body, its chest still fluttering with life, but mostly torn to shreds. Great bloody gashes had left a green apron of tears. The skins indicated tattoos surrounded the island. The skins. What the fuck is that word? The skin's iridescent tattoos surrounded to islands of nonsense. The girl's red hair was now redder. Her skull was crushed. Her pretty face was nearly ripped to the bone. I knew immediately it was the girl from the juice shop. My body tensed as I watched her chest cease. It was fluttering and the flow of blood slowed to a trickle. Soon, she was still as the rest of the street. Then suddenly, my heart was pounding again, as I realized I was not alone in the darkness. Something dark and massive was moving past the nearby bushes, watching me examine its kill. Though it moved somewhat like a cat, the thing was far bigger, larger than any tiger I'd ever seen at the zoo. As it grew closer, I saw it was standing on its hind legs, walking towards me. Not quite like a person, but like an animal trying to mimic one. I could barely breathe now. It was growing closer, though it moved slowly. I could sense that it could cover the 10 feet between us in a moment, far faster than I could slam the door. Please, don't. As the creature walked in a slant of moonlight, I realized that it was dressed in a tuxedo, or were those just the colors of its fur? My queen, I would never. The creature purred in a low voice. I live only to serve you. I looked down at the dead girl by my feet. I would have to call the police, I knew. I would have to scream for Sato to come and help me. There'd be so much to explain, but I wasn't afraid now. That moment had long passed. I was here with a friend. James? I asked, and he nodded ever so slightly. You can't do this. I didn't want this. But she was so cruel to you. She called you a very nasty name. I was hiding a few blocks away, but I heard everything. My ears are very sensitive. But you can't just kill people. Trying to stuff my growing panic in my stomach. It's not. It's not right. Of course I can. In fact, I must say, it's in my nature. Never again. Ever. James cocked his head, looking me in the eyes. What was he looking for? I could stop if you ordered it, though that would be unfortunate. You know I love to honor you with gifts. I always have, but go ahead. Make the command and I will disappear, never to leave you another present again. I looked down at the dead girl, all torn to shreds. There's a certain beauty in it, like a stained glass window, sublime in its brokenness. Just say the word. But I didn't. Thank you for the gift. It was but a trifle, my queen. Until next time. And then bowing suddenly, he backed into the boundness of the darkness. Very nice, very nice. Very long, though. Not gonna lie, though, either. It wasn't great. Not gonna lie. But, you know, They can't all be gold. We all know that. Okay, let me get a drink real quick and just then I'll continue the next story. There we go. Fuck me. Okay, so this is really killing my throat for some reason. Okay. I wish I never went to the bathroom. It's been over a week since I last left the apartment. I was meant to return to work today, but have been avoiding my boss's call. She's out there now, watching me. I can see her through the window. She'll leave soon, but then she'll be back tomorrow. If not tomorrow, then the day after that. Same time, same place. Always watching. It started in the bathroom of McDonald's, just down the road from where I work. It'd been a long shift, and I had to stay behind 2 hours as a coworker called in sick. My legs were tired from standing all day, and my eyes were drooping from exhaustion. I washed my face at the sink. The mirror reflected my awful features. Bags under the eyes, acne scarring my face. I felt icky. What are you doing here? A woman called from behind me. I flicked my hands in the sink to quickly dry them as I turned to face her. Excuse me, she continued. What are you doing in here? In front of me was a 40-something-year-old woman, blonde hair and wearing sunglasses indoors. She looked furious. Just washing my hands, I said. You're a man, she said. I'm not. What are you doing in the female bathroom, you freak? She raised her voice over mine. I'm just using the toilet. The woman pulled out her phone and presumably started recording me. This pervert is in the ladies' bathroom checking on women. I lifted my hands to block my face from the camera and walked brusquely out into the restaurant. I could hear the woman heavily footfalls trail behind me. Look at this groomer walking out as we've been called out, she said. I walked to the front counter and no doubt she was there too. A member of staff was standing there, putting an order together. Hey, I leaned over. Can you stop her? Oh yeah, call the cops and see what they have to say when they arrive. She said behind me. I'm sorry, man, the staff said. What's going on here? I don't know, I said. I was just trying to use the bathroom and she's harassing me. Go ahead, call them. They'll kick this fucking freak out of here. Man, the worker said, I'm going to ask you to stop or leave. Stop what she said. I'm just calling us this fucking pedophile. So they'll stop creeping on little girls. The worker sighed, I just call the cops. Yeah, they'll get this sick out of here, she said. I sighed. You know what? Fuck it. I'll just go. Are you sure, ma'am? The coworker said. Ma'am, the woman said, that's a dude. Yeah, I just need the toilet anyways, I said. I don't want to make a fuss. Run away. Run away like the freak you are. Apart from the shouting woman, this place was completely silent. As every bystander watched the situation unfold, I pulled my hoodie over my face and walked out the building as fast as I could. She followed. I walked across McDonald's parking lot over to the supermarket next to me where I parked my car. The entire time, the heckler followed me, her phone still up and recording. I tried to ignore her as she kept screaming absurd shit over and over. It didn't take long to make it back to the car. I jumped in and locked the door. The woman pulled the handles as soon as it clicked. Luckily, she was just too slow. My hands choked the wheel as the adrenaline started to fade. I didn't realize how fast my heart was beating until it began to slow down. She stood outside the window, still filming and shouting her obscenities as I got control of my breathing. After a minute, I started the car and reversed out of the space. She followed, still recording from the window. Once on the road, I put it into drive and sped out the parking lot. I saw her in the rearview mirror, phone in hand, still screaming. A day later, the experience still left a mark on me. I dreamed about it overnight. Her face was vivid in my mind. All day, I was filled with regret that I didn't let the police take care of it and hopefully get the woman taken away. Anything I didn't say to her floated in my mind. I noticed it when I first took my dog out for a walk. A banged up blue Chevrolet must have been from the 70s. The paint was peeling, replaced with rust. I didn't get a good look in it from across the street. The glare from the sun was too strong, but left an impression on me. I'd never seen a vehicle so distinct on this street before. Though the day I kept looking out the window, the car was still there, down the road. I couldn't make out any features from the distance, but there was someone sitting in the driver's seat. It was freaking me out. I closed all of the blinds in my apartment and tried to put it out of my mind for the time being. I was working the next day. It was a cafe franchise in the same complex as McDonald's. Most of my shift was spent making coffee and wiping down tables. Same old shit every day. Customer range from okay to horrible. I was just happy to get my paycheck. We close later than most cafes at around 10 p.m., though we're usually out of there by 10:45 p.m. I noticed it was when I was mopping the front of house. It wasn't so easy to see in the dark of night, but there was a blue Chevrolet, same model, same rust coat, in the parking lot, just outside the store. Again, I couldn't see the person sitting in the driver's seat, so I wandered out back and checked the cameras. Also not good enough. Even when I zoomed in, my coworker kept asking if I was okay. Even though he tried to hide it, he was clearly annoyed that I was slowing down the clothes for no reason. I got on with mopping, but kept my eye on the parking lot. By the time we got out, the car was long gone. It was back outside the apartment the next day. The car would arrive at around 10 a.m. and it'd leave at 9 p.m. A few times throughout the day, it would leave and then come back an hour or so later. I could see the person sitting there for hours and hours, but I didn't want to confront them out of fear what they might do. When I went in for my next shift, my coworkers were all staring at me. I greeted them with a good afternoon, but everyone returned it with a harsh glare, as if I was stuffing my bag into a locker in the back office. The store phone began ringing. My coworker in the back quickly shuffled out of there, ignoring the ringing. After a couple seconds, it stopped. I closed the locker and put a key in my trouser pocket. The phone began ringing again. No one from the front came out, back. It was company policy that the phone must be picked up, but I wasn't starting my shift for another 5 minutes. I sat down in my office and listened to it ring until eventually it stopped. 10 seconds had passed before the phone began to ring again. I picked it up. No caller ID was displayed on the screen. You've reached. Who is this? I won't come out of end. Is this Amy? I was shocked and silent for a moment. How did you know me? What's your real name? What? You need to stop playing dress up. It doesn't suit you very well. What? What are you talking about? Who is this? I looked into the mirror and I saw a blue Chevrolet parked outside. Is that you following me? Stop pretending to be a woman and I'll leave you alone. The phone suddenly hung up. I watched the Chevrolet pull out of the space and exit the parking lot on the monitor. I didn't see her again all day. When I got home after closing, a notification appeared from Facebook Messenger. It was a random account, no photo, fake name, requesting to DM me. I opened the request. Hey, you don't know me, but I've been following this random page for a while. A handful of people are sharing your photos and private information around. Sorry you had to find out this way. They attached screenshots of posts from this group. All of them had my photos, ripped from Facebook and Instagram accounts, posted. Fuck. Posted along with despairing comments and personal information. Yes, TV. Spooky time. One of the posts even shared my address saying workplace. Some screenshots and comments show people taking glee in the act of hurting me. All of them made fun of how I looked, picking apart my insecurities one by 1. He's too tall. Look at those big hands. Why is he caked in makeup in every photo? The anonymous account linked the group, but it was private. I called in sick the next day and took everything I had seen to the police. I told the detective about the Chevrolet, the online post, the one at McDonald's, everything. I printed off the screenshots and gave him the link to the account. I noticed the reg number of the car. All the detective did was assure me everything was going to be okay and made a report. Although the lack of immediate action was concerning, I got home 2 hours later. The car was parked up the same spot it had occupied for days. I called the police, then wanting to make sure a tangible incident report was made, hopefully create a paper trail if it ever escalated. However, before the cops could arrive, the car was gone. They somehow knew the police were coming. I made my report to the officers and they stood scolding me for wasting time before driving off. When I got into work the next day, my manager pulled me aside before I started my shift. He sat me down in his office. "We've been getting reports," he said, "from the police here and head office of someone harassing everyone, and they keep naming you. I just want to make sure everything's okay and if I can do anything to help." "I'm sorry, what?" "What about the head office?" "Well," he said, "HR's been getting floods of calls from no caller ID numbers and email spam to them. It's clearly getting put into spam database and stuff, but we've had to turn the phone off here because people keep calling at all hours of the day. Head office made reports to the police, but they're still investigating and want to make sure we give you the proper support." My heart sank. Everyone in the store had heard the woman's rants, even the middle management that know of me through the paperwork they received. All of them know the embarrassing comments some random woman made. Anyone knows all the embarrassing comments some random woman made about me. All of them knew I was being stalked. The surveillance monitors were open on the desk. I looked them up and saw the blue Chevrolet was in the parking lot. Something broke. I got up and walked out the door. My manager called me after, though I can't recall his words. There was a sizable chunk of concrete broken off the sidewalk just outside. I took it in my hand and made for the car. I got close to the driver, the same 40-something-year-old woman that had harassed me in the McDonald's. He saw me coming and immediately started using and drove for the exit. "Leave me the fuck alone!" I arched my arm, the concrete left my palm, and flew towards the Chevrolet. It missed the roof by a few inches and kept flying until it hit a black BMW parked behind it. The concrete broke in half and has left a massive crack on the windshield. I fell to the floor. The emotions had finally hit me as the adrenaline wore off. I began crying and did not stop for an hour. The police came. When the customer eventually came back to their car from the supermarket, he was pissed. Luckily, the two officers were able to keep things relatively calm. My manager spoke for me as I sat in a cafe. The two officers came in and informed me that he wasn't pressing charges so long as he covered the damages. Even though I had little money to my name, I agreed. My manager told me to take a couple of days off and said he was there if I needed help. All my coworkers stared at me in complete shock as I left the cafe. None of them said a word. I drove home by myself, even though he needed it. I decided to take my dog for a walk. I didn't want to be outside by myself at that moment. Instead, I made a cup of coffee and stepped in my window. The blue Chevrolet is still parked down the street. Always watching. Okay. I would say, alright. I keep accidentally opening up multiple screens to the fucking one immediately in the front. Not amazing. It's good. Once again, drink because this is fucking tearing my throat apart for some reason. Hold up. Oh, thank God. Fuck me. My throat was on fire. There's only 5 of us on this camping trip. We keep counting 6. There are bright flashes of red in the sky, as if someone was waving around a red flare from space. Faint, but noticeable. We all made UFO jokes and laughed as if we nailed our tents into the ground. I knew for sure that there were five of us. We had all been friends since early middle school and were celebrating our high school graduation with this getaway camping trip. The flashes of red must have stopped randomly as we made conversation while fixing up our tents. Dave, tea would do well. Probably, but I think I have not found a tea that I like to taste of. Most of them taste like dirt in my mouth, so you know. Haven't found one yet. Dave managed to put his tent together the fastest and told us he was going to go find some branches for the fire. I remember how he had to work with me at the local gas station last year. We used to do the night shift together, and it had made working at a desolate gas station job much more fun than it was supposed to be. There was also Eric in the corner still reading his tent manual, fidgeting with his signature round glasses. I wasn't as close with Eric as I was with the others, but I still remember sitting with him at math class and copying his homework one time. Ava was also there talking with Sally, my cousin. Both had decided to team up and work on one tent at a time. I also have clear memories of them, hanging around at school in our usual places. In fact, I even knew Ava's younger brother, as he used to beg to go with us wherever we went. I bring this all up because I'm sure there were five of us, including me, and that I knew everyone in the group. So Dave had went to get some branches as he pulled out some foldable chairs and set them around the fire pit. I remember feeling uneasy as the sun set, and darkness began to consume the forest. The shadows of trees elongated around us as the minutes ticked by. Eric went to get a flashlight from his bag while we worked what was taking Dave so long. He appeared soon after, the harsh rustling sound of bushes signifying his return. We were all buried in our chairs at this point, covered by our jackets. The temperature had dropped quickly, and a slightly breeze was beginning to pick up. Thank you, cigarette. Appreciate you, dog. Good job. Geez, you guys weren't even bothered to pull out a chair for me? Dave says he arranged all the branches in the pit. We had set up chairs around the fire. I try to rationalize the situation, but no matter how hard my focus, my head felt like it was underwater. I had perfect clarity up until the moment, but when I tried to focus on why five chairs are occupied, when Dave hadn't sat down yet, my head somehow, my head seemed to just stop working, as if someone was reaching in and pulling out my thoughts instinctually. I felt even more uneasy now, and I had placed why. The whole forest had gone dead silent. I looked around at the face of the others, and I couldn't tell that they had felt the same. Eric was fidgeting with his fingers, trying to scan around the group and spot the extra person, but it was futile. I scanned every face, each etched in worry and frowning in frustration, except for. It's alright, I'll get to share myself, Dave said, breaking the silence and somewhat alleviating the tension. I got up and offered to help. He looked in my eyes, nodded knowingly. We headed away from the fire pit towards the tents, but I kept my eyes glued on the group. How many people are here? I stood at Dave as he looked around and realized that we had indeed only packed 5 chairs. In fact, a person had brought with them their own chair. They were heavy to carry, and we wouldn't bring any extras needlessly. There's 5, right? I mean, there's 5 chairs, Dave replied. His voice waved as he spoke. No, I think maybe one of us just forgot our chair? I said. My mind was struggling to address the issue head on and now sought to find rational excuses instead. I didn't quite feel in control of my thoughts. It felt like swimming in a dream. And if I tried to force myself to think about who the 6th person was, my head began to throb. Yeah, that sounds about right, actually, I think, Dave said, relaxing and heading back to the group. When we walked back to the fire pit and circled the chairs, 2 chairs were empty. One for me and one for Dave. Everything was adding up now, even though we all agreed it wasn't before. Sally suggested we were all probably tired of the long hike here, and probably just need to get some sleep. She could have been right. We were all sleep deprived from waking up very early today and to make it on time. Ava brought up the drinks. The whole six-pack was emptied. We all moved closer to the crackling fire for warmth as we took sips from our cans and reminisced on memories of last year. Ava was in the middle of telling us about the one time she was home alone when weird things happened in our house. We, when I got these sudden chills, despite the pleasant warmth of the fire, all familiar and pale. What the fuck? Am I an idiot? I think I am an idiot. Oh yeah. What felt cozy and safe moments ago felt wrong now because I realized there was a crucial detail I missed. Who who started the fire? I asked, completely interrupting Ava in the middle of her story and breaking everyone else's immersion. Everyone looked momentarily annoyed until they realized they had no answer. Once again, I scanned the faces standing back at me, all barely illuminated by the light of the fire, all familiar and pale from fear. Wasn't it you, Dave? Eric said. Dave shook his head. I think the person standing by Jenny did it, Sally said, looking at me. I whipped my head around so quickly it hurt. My heart was pounding in my ears. There was nothing behind me except for the encompassing darkness of the woods. Staring at those tall, dark trees behind me made me feel exposed. I felt like a lost bird in a vast field. Wait a minute, I don't know, Sally said. Her eyes had gone wide and she was shaking visibly. She continued to look around frantically as Ava moved over to her, placing her hands on her shoulder, trying to calm her down. I think we should leave this place, Ava said. Yeah, something just doesn't feel right, but I can't put my finger on it, Dave said. But it's so dark in the forest now, we'll probably get lost if we leave now, someone else said. Yeah, I think we should stay the night and leave as soon as we can tomorrow, Eric said. I tried to protest, but realized Eric was right. The woods harbored an oppressive darkness which, within navigation, will be near impossible. Let's not sleep in separate tents, just to be safe, Sally said. We all agreed. We only brought one-person tent, with all of us, but we could squeeze two if we tried. That way no one will be alone all night. Following this conversation, we all got up and made our pairs. I went with Dave, and Sally, like always, went with Ava. Eric kept complaining that he didn't have a pair, but we reassured him he did. He wouldn't accept it. I think at some point we all realized there were only five of us, and suddenly we were all huddling in the middle of a clearing. Why do we keep thinking there's six of us here? Eric asked. Sweat was dripping down his face despite the cold. We had nearly let him all alone on his own under the assumption that there was another person. My stomach turned as I squeezed my eyes shut and tried to mentally recap everyone here. My head throbbed, but I kept pushing it. There's me, Dave, Eric, Ava, Sally, and I was pointing at each of them as I said their name. I wrenched and emptied the contents of my stomach on the ground when I got past Sally. The left side of my head felt like there was a knife stuck in it. My vision was blurry. Dave held me up to stop me from collapsing, and we all wordlessly started to move towards the tent as someone put the fire out. Dave helped me into a tent while the four outside discussed what to do. I could only focus on snippets of conversation as the excruciating pain beating against my skull came and went in waves. Sally had the brilliant idea of arranging three tents together so their openings faced together at the right angles in sort of a U shape, so we could sleep as close as possible and also limit the entrances to our tents. Dave was about to go and help as they worked outside, but I clutched his hand and asked him to stay with me. The tents took some time to arrange. I started to feel a little bit better once everyone got settled in the tents. A quick head count confirmed that there were five of us. Eric went to sleep in his tent alone, but he was more than comfortable with it since all the tents were very close now. Looking back at it now, I think he's just trying to put a brave face on for us all. I regret that moment deeply. letting him sleep in his tent alone. He was always less integrated in our group and knew that none of us would pair of him. Just before going to bed, we all agreed to leave as soon as the sun rose in the morning. I remember taking one last look outside the tent into the forest before trying to fall asleep. The wind had picked up, and the tree branches were swaying gracefully. Beyond our clearing was just pure darkness. It felt like the trees were closing in on me. With the faint moonlight illuminating our clearing, I turned my head to look over at the two tents we had left out and saw someone standing next to them. Despite the circumstances, sleep came quickly and easily, somehow. Ava's shrill scream woke me up in the middle of the night. Dave and I ripped our tent door open to find Sally and Ava looking at Eric's tent. We pushed them aside. Eric's sleeping bag was rolled up. He was still inside of it, his head in the center, his face contorted in utter agony. The rest of his body rolled around it, with the blue fabric now dripping with dark blood. Dave zipped up the door of the tent. Ava was in shock. Her eyes had become glassy and unfocused. Sally was shaking her repeatedly, tears streaming down her face. Dave picked up his torch and yelled at us to get up and run. We left the campsite behind and entered the trail we had come from. The five of us huddled together, Dave leaning in front as he cast his weak flashlight over the paths we could see. All we had to help us get through this 2-hour trail was a small white circle of light. Even the moon failed to illuminate our surroundings through the dense foliage. Ava tripped and fell, twisting her ankle. We came to a stop. Someone said they knew how to splint, so we can keep going. They dragged her into the woods instead. It happened so quickly for any of us to process. Sally was about to run out to Ava when Dave held her back. She struggled and managed to free herself, ran into the trees to follow the echoes of Ava's screams. I was about to run after her, but Dave held me by the shoulders and shook me hard. "We have to get out of here, Jenny. Please," he said. I hesitated, but jolted into motion again when Sally's voice was abruptly cut. She had been calling Ava's name as she ran after her. Dave and I continued to run down the trail, trying to get to our cars so we could get out of here. There was nothing we could do. At some point, there were 3 of us running the trail. Dave and I shoulder to shoulder while someone followed us closely behind. "Dave? Who's behind us?" My heart was threatening to burst out through my ribcage and my legs burned. He turned to look at me. Confusion turned into fear on his face and then into rage. Yes, Hubert, look at me in all my glory. Da-da-da-da. "You keep running," he told me as he produced a pocket knife from his pants. He handed me the car keys, which I nearly dropped. Then he turned around and jumped at whatever was behind us. I continued to run in fear as the sounds of a struggle grew behind me. I tripped and tumbled through the trail for what felt like hours. I didn't allow myself to stop. I almost cried when the trail ended and I walked into the familiar car park. Not wasting a second, I ran to the car and started it up, accelerating out of the forest and onto the highway within mere seconds. I'm typing this post at a rest stop. My phone finally regained service and I've called 911. To try and explain the situation, I don't think they'll believe my version of events, but they send a car my way regardless. As I wait, the sun is finally starting to rise. After I hit the post button on this, I'm gonna check why the person in my backseat's been silent the whole time. Okay. Better. Much better. Like it a lot more. I gotta stop doing that. Alright, next story. My voice is actually doing better now. The only other astronaut... Fuck. English is hard, apparently. The only other astronaut on this mission died 6 weeks ago, but the computer insists their life signs are still stable. When Ben died, he made very little noise. It was the computers that alerted me. Shrill alarms and flashing lights. I hadn't gotten out of my sleeping bag before the smartwatch I had lit up with half a dozen messages about system failure. Astronaut 1. Heart rate monitor, failure. Astronaut 2, skin conductive monitor failure. Astronaut 1, VO2 monitor failure. The situation didn't sink in until I was shaking and unresponsive Ben. White eyes rolling back into his skull, blood pooling in his ears like red jelly. Viscously, mass, no gravity. It made me look, it made me nauseous to look at. HQ would later say Ben died from an arrhythmia, 1 in a million, a freak death that happened to occur in low orbits. So now what? I asked if the panic had died down and the reality of the situation finally set it in. HQ sent me a relatively used or disclosed document to outline what I had to do. Bodies, bodies pose a unique threat in microgravity, it explained. All that order becomes disordered. What is solid becomes liquid. What is liquid turns to gas. First thing I needed to do was put Ben's body somewhere that had no oxygen and was freezing cold. Somewhere he would pose no danger to himself, isolated, but easily relatively. The conclusion was obvious. I knew they suggested put him before I reached out part of the booklet. It happened so fast that Ben was still warm when I put him in the special bag designed to endure the vacuum of space. I kept expecting him to protest as I pulled at stiffening limbs and manipulated swelling joints. Every step of the process, every zip, every bit of Velcro, I had to remind myself he wasn't going to complain. I felt intimate, but it wasn't intimacy. It requires two people. By that point, Ben was just meat. The spacewalk itself was something else. The bag that surrounded Ben's body inflated in the vacuum, and I instinctively felt the urge to undo what I've done. There's a body in there, and bodies aren't meant to have so little between them in outer space. When I touched the bag, I could still feel him beneath the paper thin material. The crease of an elbow, the bump of his nose. By the time I reached my destination, his body already felt brittle. Attaching him to the station was easy enough, on a technical level. Leaving him there went against every instinct I had. Nose is itchy. Hold on 1 second. There we go. Alright, back to the story. After that, there was no pretending that he was coming back. A day later, I began to pack his things away. There was a catharsis in it that I found calming. I cataloged his belongings with thin detachment. Most things were dry and uninteresting. Photos of him with a dog, a copy of Michael Shea book, a certificate of excellency from NASA that he received when he was 10. He discovered a comment he told during the first our meeting. Backyard of a telescope. NASA let him name it and everything. That's how he knew he wanted to be an astronaut. Described that as a calling. Ben was like that. A real life Boy Scout. In life, he had no edges. You'd think, given our history, we'd be close. Two men selected based on extensive psychological profiling. Together, we had simulated multiple missions to Mars, 2 on ground, 1 in space. All of them highly secretive. An official mission to Mars was meant to be next, at which point the whole project would be made public. But the key to having two people work together alone for nearly an entire year isn't to find two guys who are best friends forever. It's finding two people who don't grate on one another. Neither hate nor love. Two men who simply enjoy their own company but don't mind one another. Ben and I had become acquainted over all that time, but it wasn't like we were brothers in arms. We worked so well precisely because there was no meat to the friendship. No stakes, nothing to argue over. To me, Ben was a nice guy, but that's all. I figured he was plain and simple all the way down. No dark secrets, no real problems to speak of. The journal changed that. It was trapped, it was taped to the inside of a panel of the computer at his workstation. He must have hidden it close to his things, somewhere out of sight, but easily retrievable. Frayed leaves and yellow pages and ancient some ancient artifact. Last thing I expected to find in a space station. I almost mistook the letter carving for some sort of personal Bible, the sort of well-worn tome held by a preacher making exclamations about the devil, but its insides were handwritten and hardly in keeping with a Bible. Scribbles, shapes, phrases repeated and dissected. Some of it was even in binary. It seemed like the ravings of a child or a lunatic. I thought it was maybe a mindfulness exercise, but empty-headedly doing helped him get his head straight during stressful moments. But that didn't explain why he kept it hidden, and why the numbers and pages seemed strangely organized. I don't know how to describe it exactly, except to say that there was a vague impression that it meant something to the person who made it. Every last gram on the shovel is accounted for. What you bring up with you. It could be some random crap that you want last minute. Ben would have to clear the journal. I'm assuming he kept contact secret. One look at it would have been writing, and would have had him in psych eval before the end of the day. But the book's size and weight would have been logged and accounted for. It could have not have gone on the station by accident. So I knew immediately that Ben had wanted it for something. I studied it for over an hour trying to figure out what it was. Flickering from one page to the next, glancing at rows of numbers, strange fractals, something that looked like a cross between an eye and textbook drawing of an atom. Given the way his writing and art skills developed throughout the book, I began to suspect that he had been adding to it since childhood, which was just another layer to an ever-growing mystery. I thought I was never going to get any insight into the book until about 3/4 of the way through. I came across yet another page filled with rows and rows of numbers. Only this time, one of the strings was underlined, and a single word had been scratched, ragged, and angry next to it. The only bit of English or any human language in all those pages, the only thing written in a way that can make sense to living human. The word itself made me stop dead in my tracks, made my blood boil. 170 318 042 636 aneurysm. The suspicion that came over me felt like a madness. I told myself I had to be nuts. When I checked the data from Ben's biometer, that I had to be crazy to even entertain the notion, but the information recorded by several different machines confirmed it. Ben's exact time of death was 17th of March, 2018, 04:26 hours and 36 seconds. I don't think I moved for a good 15 minutes after that. Just stared at the data as my mind worked its way around a giant, impossible realization. Ben knew he was going to die. Of course, I tried to rationalize this. Anyone would. I came up with a half a dozen reasons he'd written what he'd written. None of them were comforting, although they at least fit in with a more rational worldview. Take, for example, the idea that Ben had killed himself at the exact moment in time to meet some sort of prophecy he scrawled in days or even hours before. Was that a good thing? What did it mean for him? Ignore the logistical issues, what poison could be timed to the second. Let's just say that's what he did. The left that left the hair-raising question of why, and there was no comfortable answer that I could see. Of course, I went through that book with a fine-tooth comb, looking for any more clues. I really wish I hadn't. I eventually found another word, this one closer to the very end of the journal. Another date and timestamp that laid 6 weeks in the future. Another word scratched painfully into the layer by a clumsy fist. Immolation. Permission denied. I bit my lip and took a deep breath. What about the station's integrity? I asked. No signs of any issues from external cameras, they replied. I can hear something banging on the hole, I told them. Nothing is visible on the cameras. That's why I need to go take a look, I wrote. It's hard to argue with a computer. You can't shoot in a death glare. HQ could have easily arranged video calls, but really they wanted distance. Made it easier to say no. Solo spacewalk is incredibly dangerous, they quickly wrote back. Microphones in station hole are reporting nothing of concern. Usual impact from debris. Nothing that carbonated reports of external tapping information for spacewalk is denied. I made no further response, but instead chose to close the screen and wondered if they're being entirely truthful. The tapping sounds coming and going over the last few days was unmistakable, even over all those wiring machineries and motors. Space stations are loud. They even give us earplugs to handle it. But whatever was out there was somehow louder. Or perhaps given the circumstances, I was just sensitive to the thought of something. Anything. Out there. There's no denying it annoyed me. Just one of those sounds I found impossible to block. Like water dripping in a bathtub at 3 a.m. Tap, 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 tap. No sense of order. Not on the surface level. But something, maybe underneath. Some sense or reason. Some kind of regularity that the brain detects and can't let go of. How could the microphones possibly miss it? Sleep was getting progressively difficult. At times, I thought the station was under some kind of hidden stress. Materials freezing and warming in irregular ways. No atmosphere, no conducting of heat. Things get hot in sun's rays. Objects warm and cool to both extents. This is just routine stuff for anything up in space, of course. But it didn't stop me thinking about all the ways the station was just a pile of metal that could become undone, could break and tear, bend, stretch. Like watching a ring of your plane wobbling during turbulence. It's an uncomfortable reminder that you're just a monkey in a fancy toy. And what if something had come loose? Something. At first, I stuck to this notion strictly, asking myself, what if some antenna or shaft or bit of metal had gone loose and was banging against the hole? That'd be bad, of course, but of course that wasn't really what I was thinking. It's what I wrote to HQ about over and over and over. But what was really on my mind was the thought that maybe somehow he had gotten loose. And of course that's not so silly, right? The specially designed bag he was in, the one that would vent any gases produced by decompression while maintaining the body's integrity, was brand spanking new. No, how many times had been tested? Never. Never ever. Ben was the first. So of course it might come loose. It was a possibility. Just because it's space age technology doesn't mean it's sophisticated. He was strapped to the outside of the Christmas tree to the family sedan. Maybe, I wondered, what if one of those shafts had broken? Now he's tumbling against the side every now and again. Never mind that there wasn't anything out there to prompt that kind of buffering. No air, no wind. If he'd come loose, he'd just float a little farther away. But something was making that noise. And I worried almost constantly that it was him. The only problem was I had cameras. Lots. And all of them, every single time, showed the same exact thing. The bag, barely changed from when I last saw it in person, strapped firmly and securely to the station's hull. This should have reassured me. Should have, but it didn't. Something was out there, tapping on the hull, on and off. No pattern, no reason, no correlation. It came and it went, seemingly choosing its moments to bother me at most. Sleep was difficult for multiple reasons. The tapping was bad enough, but lately my nightmares had taken a strange turn. Black, cold. In them, I was trapped in a suffocating film, freezing cold, non-stop agony, fighting furiously to free myself. Was this black void of a nightmare, like all terribly deep dreams? It colored my thoughts for the rest of the day, and each time I had it, it got harder to shake. I tried to endure, compartmentalize, take my mental turmoil and put it in a box, write unhinged across the lid, and sit rock back and forth waiting for my rescue. And that was an option, a good one even. But there was one little word that stopped me going the route of hunkering down and ignoring my own madness. Immolation. When HQ told me that the date of the shuttle would reach me, I spent quite a bit of time wondering if this wasn't just some big experiment. The sheer coincidence of it all, the magnitude of it. They sent me the message, and the subject line had three exclamation marks. Like the ship's communicator officer on the other side couldn't wait to deliver good news for once. Let the professionalism slip. They'd finally arranged a shuttle to retrieve me, and after it was done, dropping some guys off at the ISS, it was luckily it comes so soon. A stroke of logistical genius allowed them to sneak Ben and me back without it being too conspicuous. I should be thankful, they told me. But I was just stunned. The date matched the one Ben had written out. Factoring in time travel, I'd be entering Earth's atmosphere at the exact time the prophesied moment would come and go. Ripe for an error. A mislabeled heat pad. A mistimed thruster. Something. Anything to go wrong. And then me plunging to my desk in a burning metal tube. Ripe for immolation. If it wasn't for Ben out there tapping away, I wanted to know. I needed to know. I was a rational man, a skeptic. I did not believe the natural world would produce a man that could predict his own death down to the minute or the second. Nor did I believe he could predict mine. But I am only an animal. I'm made of meat, vulnerable, a raw nerve in a world of jutting rocks. And I am risk averse. That word, immolation, not random, not chance. Up in the void, surrounded by pure oxygen, was a was surrounded by pure oxygen. Fire was a constant risk. Ben's little numbers loomed large in my mind. I had to make sure everything was in place. I had to make sure there were no errors. If it was just a prediction, which I refused to accept at face value, then maybe I could take heart from it. What could Ben do in face of an aneurysm? Nothing. But a malformation, fire, an accident. That sort of thing could be avoided. Just so long as everything was in working order. Just so long as everything was where it was meant to be. What did HQ know? Cameras and remote operators? Not enough. No one else was in the tin can except me. Why even have humans in space if you wouldn't trust their instincts and judgment? I needed to know what was making the noise. I needed to get out of here. HQ caught on too late. I was inside the suit and airlock cycling by the time they realized. I chose my timing well. Halfway through my maintenance shift, told them I was taking a look at my suit, make sure everything was in order. Meant they were sort of catch on to what I was doing. Technically, they could stop the process at any stage. They could do anything from their side, but I threatened to force a manual override that would shut them out from that part of the system. They told me they'd take court-martial on return, but that was a piss-weak threat. For me, the stakes were higher than a court-martial. In the end, they backed down. Know how hard it is to build a space station in secret? It came first. If the spacewalk went wrong and I died, the station would still be there. $1 billion asset awaiting the next top secret mission. My neck was on the line, not theirs. I accepted it. Under time pressure, HQ accepted to it too. By the time the door finally opened and I was able to gently glide myself out and around the brim, so I was clinging onto the station's exterior, they already tapped the cameras and were guiding me along to my destination. But it was background noise to me at that point. Their voices and little pings, consistent readouts of suit temperature and distance station hole. Meaningless. All of it. What mattered was the sound. Tap, tap, tap. I was anxious at this point, or perhaps, if I'm honest, scared. Space is all extremes, not just heat, but light too. The shadows cast are vast and strange. You move in and out of Earth's shadow like it's a hand in front of the projector. And the ones cast by yourself and surroundings are a special kind of black. The station, with its midra and pipes and cables, was covered in abyssal shadows. Long, warped things of ambiguous origins. Sometimes I looked at the darkness and wondered if there was anything there at all, or if it was simply bisected by some strange cosmic force, like I might fall into it somehow, lost forever. I'm back after a second nap. Good for you, Crying Rock. Good for you. Normally, I think it's beautiful. Spacewalks had, for me, in the past, been almost religious experience. This carried the same sense of weight, but for very different reasons. I felt watched, something I tried so desperately to ignore, but it got harder and harder. Kept looking over my shoulder, kept overthinking every little bump and vibration I felt on the station's hull. By the time I reached a place where I had shot Ben's body, I was close to a panic attack. That whole part of the station was covered in darkness, the kind where I couldn't see a damn thing. It was only under HQ's voice telling me I'd reached a destination that let me know Ben was lying just a few feet from me. Under their direction, I found him. And when the light fell upon the bag itself, I saw the metallic fabric glittering with ice. Touching it, I felt Ben's frozen body inside, hard as rock. I gave him a nudge, and he didn't move an inch. The straps holding him in place were still there, firm as ever. What else could be causing the sound? I asked. There is one option. The nameless voice on the other end sounded reluctant, but that had been default since Ben died. HQ always sounded like there was holding something back. What's that? We are not, 100% certain how corpses will respond to the changing temperatures and vacuum. Obviously, parts of the body would freeze and expand, fluids in particular. Right now, the back has a lot of surface contact with the metallic hull. One theory is that the blood may be freezing and submitting to the surface beneath temperature change. I looked at the bag and grimaced. How much blood exactly? We can't possibly say for certain how much would have left the body, only that the bag's job is to contain it until we return. We are able to confirm using instruments in the station that the panel you are standing on is very well below freezing. Everything should be in a manageable state, so to speak, solid. Likely one large clump, they replied, and then after a moment they added, You wanted this. You wanted to waste resources. Now that you're here, not to investigate further, you need to look inside. Of course I wanted this, hadn't I? To satisfy my morbid curiosity, to address the rabid thought of my mind that had kept me awake, filling what little sleep I had with nightmares. Now that I was at this threshold, I found myself so afraid of not even moving my hand took a kind of effort. And yet, I had no choice. I had to see this one through. The bag opened with a special design zipper. No sound, but I could feel the click, click, click of the specialized teeth opening up. It's stupid, but as I unfurled the flap, I could have sworn a terrible, foetid stench passed over me. It lasted no longer than a second, but it was so vivid that I turned and stabbed my eyes shut as they watered. Power of suggestion, I told myself as I opened them. That was all, nothing more. No air, no sound, no smell. I took a few deep breaths. I tried not to let the incident unsettle me further, and looked inside the bag. Multiple people watching my video feed gasped as I made a fairly unflattering noise, somewhere between a moan and a cry. I expected something, God at worst, I expected something ghoulish. Blue skin, ice was collecting around the eyelids like a body found in the Arctic, but Ben had transformed. Great jagged shards of frozen blood had erupted from the eyes and ears and mouth. His jaw dislocated to an unnatural angle as an icicle the size of my forearm forced its way out. His neck was broken, his torso shredded with stripes of flesh hanging off from ribbons, and his hands were clawing at his face with bizarre yellow nails. They'd even left grooves in the skin. What the fuck is this? I asked to no one in particular, only to realize that HQ had been talking amongst themselves the whole time. A malfunction in the bag. Unexpected pressure, temperature changes. No, this isn't normal. Let's not pretend this is normal. Guys, I tried splitting the chatter and leading silence. Why are his arms like that? Uh, uh, muscle spasms? Possibly caused by, well, whatever caused the unusual reaction in his circulatory system. Maybe that caused his arms to curl up towards his face? There are scratch marks on his cheeks, I replied. Skin under his nails. Are we sure? For sure. He was dead when I brought him out here. A dozen urgent alarm voices, all desperate to avoid even the slightest irresponsibility, told me, no, that was not possible. But looking down at Ben's tortured face, I couldn't help but feel a little bit of doubt. I was about to ask what I ought to do next when the sun rose across the station. Unlike Earth, this wasn't a gentle morning. It flipped like a light switch. Thankfully, the suit reached it before he had a chance to blind me, but the temperature began to rapidly climb. I watched as something beneath Ben's skin begin to writhe in the new warmth. That's definitely not normal. We can offer no further insight to the situation at this moment. The footage you're saying this is under review by a panel of experts. HQ told me something urgent and robotic, like the person on the other end was stifling panic. Current orders are to take samples, reseal the bag, and return to the station. Are you sure I should be taking this stuff inside with me? There's some mumbling on the other side before the same operator replied, "Forget samples, seal the bag, return to the station." Gladly, I replied before pulling the zipper shut. I was keen to leave and made the journey back faster than I should have. The crawling sensation you feel when being watched, it was all over me. Made me clumsy. I knocked myself more than once on the way back, like I was suddenly unused to the suit's control. I just couldn't escape the notion that everywhere I looked, someone or something had darted back just out of view. Of course, that was impossible, so I told myself, what could survive out in space? But it only made it that much worse to imagine something slithering in the shadows, tapping on the hole, stalking me every step of the way back. When I finally reached the door, the tension inside me rose. If something was going to happen, it would happen with my back turned on infinity. I felt so vulnerable. uh, Reynolds. The sound made me jump. I was so focused on my surroundings, I forgot I was being supervised by the room of people full people. I forgot I was being supervised by a room full of people 1,000 miles away. What is it? Reynolds, we're seeing something here we're not sure of. Being told you should hold off on returning. Something about your voice and the make stomach sink. They didn't just sound confused. They made no mistake when you're clinging to the side of the station. All of your own confusion would have been bad enough, but no, there's something else. Fear. We there's an we there's an anomaly. They added. No one down here knows how to proceed. We're currently seeking input from higher ups. This is unprecedented. What the fuck is going on? It began with, well, signs from some of the biomonitors, specifically Ben's. The last word hit like a truck. What? Yes, and the cameras are. At first, we thought they were malfunctioning. It appeared as if Ben's bag was empty, and then, Reynolds, we noticed something. Something else. Guys, what is going on? I'm being told I can't say more. Just wait. I tightened my grip on the railing, my heart pounding. Finally, the door cycled open, and I was ready to disregard all orders from the man speaking to me from HQ, practically screaming in my ear. Don't enter, Reynolds. Do not enter the station. We're seeing on the cameras. You can't let that in. Something out here. I'm getting signal for reach. Tap, tap, tap. I stopped. My brain processed. I heard that. I heard something in the vacuum of space. I looked around my hands, my feet. That couldn't be possible, not unless tap, 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 tap. If I moved my head, I turned my eyes to the very edge of my helmet's visor and watched as a single yellow fingernail tapped gently on the glass. The man in HQ spoke in a terrifying voice. He's on your suit. The terror that just shot through me was electric, while fire coursed through my veins. Without even thinking, I reacted like I just found out there was a grenade set to my back, all instinct, no rationality. I cried out and swung my arm around, trying to knock Ben off my back, but all I accomplished was setting off some alarms as I damaged my suit. Get it off, I screamed at no one in particular. Get it off of me! I thrashed desperately and felt something shuffling around the exterior of the bulky suit. Finally, my eyes fell upon something useful. The jet controls. I folded my hands into place and immediately blasted myself onto the door pressure chamber, turning at last minute so that the back of the suit smashed the thick secondary door. I hoped whatever was clinging at the back of me was destroyed by the impact. But when I looked up, Ben was still out there, grappling at me with a mouthful of frozen blood. Slowly, his movement packed with an eerie confidence of a predator. He began to prepare to enter the station. Reynolds, get away from the door. We're initiating an emergency shutdown. Ben had one hand inside the door, slammed, and Ben had one hand inside when the door slammed shut and forcefully cut it off. Even in space, with the bulkhead between us, I could have sworn I heard him scream. There was no ignoring Ben or the sound he made. Not anymore. Terrible thumps that battered the station. The location changing seemingly at random. This showed the people on the ground insane. Oh, they heard my fair share of rationalizations over the last few hours. Been sent Ben's book worth of written material of every type of expert you can imagine. Ever since my colleague's death, I've been wrestling with all sorts of bizarre thoughts. But after the spacewalk, it's like... Sorry. It's like what they spilled out of my head and now were terrorizing other like-minded skeptics. As they might, no one in HQ could make sense of it. But they didn't have the journal. After what happened during my spacewalk, it became a priority to figure out what the fuck was going on. Those numbers Ben had recorded weren't gibberish. I sort of known that from the start. To read them was to feel like you were reading another language, something secret, hidden. And while I never cracked the code, not even after all this time, I figured out what Ben had found. Light. The thick was too. The trick was to dig deeper into Ben's research. Specifically, a pet project of his he spent nearly his entire life chasing. A little comet of ice, a ball of ice, way out in the Kepler belt, where the solar system abates and a great cosmic void begins. Something small and insignificant that rotated, shifted, and occasionally caught the sun, bouncing protons right back at us. A glittering snowball so faint as to be invisible unless you happen to look at the right place at the right time. Like Ben, like Ben did when he was just 10 and playing hobbyist with Dad's humblest backyard telescope. A light in the darkness, a light that spoke to a few instruments Ben had adjusted to record each little emission. Flash on, flash off, flash on, flash on, flash off. Tap, tap, tap. Binary to hexadecimal, and from there, God, something else. Something that spoke to him. Something out there had spoken to him. I don't know what scared me more. The sound of the reanimating Ben pounding away at the station, or an imminent, all too near threat, or a thought of something in the void whispering unknown secrets to a man for the last 2 decades. An idea that occasionally rose to me like the tide, swallowing me whole. If I dwelt on it for no more than a few moments, I never did figure out what the transition was saying, but I was transfixated nonetheless. Not just by Ben's little journal that contained hundreds, thousands of handwritten records, but the live transmission he had set up on his computer, the one that he converted into a sound. It was like an earworm on steroids, like white noise with acid, a flood of alien ideas that left me confused and drooling if I listened for too long. All told, I spent no more than a few days with access to that transmission, and by the end of it, I felt like I was on the verge of melting away. But Ben had been exposed to that thing since childhood, spent years and years listening and recording and waiting, working towards something none of us could really hope to understand. I had to assume that that transmission was responsible for his death, or even worse, what happened to him afterwards. He had always been the reason for this. Had it always been the reason for his coming to space? Had the Ben I known just been a sham? The sound, the light coming from out there. It felt wrong. It wasn't a gentle lure or a science bull. It was dark and overpowering. Why had he given into it? Why had he done anything it wanted? How much of his life had been lived because of its needs and wants? One thing I could be sure of, as I spent days listening to Ben's furious rampage on the exterior of the station, whatever had spoken to him, it was hostile, and it couldn't be allowed to come back with me. Reynolds, I'm being told this is going to be a bit of an unconventional pickup. I scoffed as I finished suiting up. That was an understatement. What did they tell you? I asked as I pulled my helmet down and initiated the door opening sequence. There are concerns about contamination, the pilot told me. Not sure that means, didn't they say it was a biochemical or chemical? Also, it's a little weird if you ask me. We're meant to pick you up mid-spacewalk, is that right? Yup, I implied. Huh. You up for that? We're told we can come about 200 meters away. But you'll have to choose. You have to close the rest with suit thruster. Gonna be something else for you. Untethered journey from one vehicle to the next. It's never been done before. I'm well aware of the risk, I said. Just keep your eyes peeled. This time, it was his turn to scarf. For what? He cried. You'll know it when you see it. Trust me. I made the journey with my back to the shuttle, floating in the wrong direction at a slow but consistent speed, my eyes glued to the station, looking for some signs of Ben. There was the occasional flash of something red, the slight shimmer of movement, often obscured by some of the station's panel and antenna, that let me know he was still on the exterior, skulking around somewhere. So long as he stayed there, I knew I'd be okay. but the entire time I kept waiting for the other foot to drop, for the tension to finally explode into that life-threatening danger I knew was waiting for me. It came as a surprise when I finally approached the shuttle without incident. Pilot told me I was a few meters away, and it was time to turn around. So I did, drifting around as gently as the driver returning to the surface. I had my back to the station for no more than a few seconds when the pilot grunted, "Huh, that's odd." He said it nonchalant, but the object that hit me was anything but minor. Ben, uninterested in making the journey safely, had launched himself off the station as fast as he could, and with no way of slowing down, he hit me at full speed, slammed me up against a part of the door frame and sending both of us tumbling into the void before anyone had even had the time to register his attack. The time, this time he was not letting me go get a door between us. He scrambled over my suit like a deranged insect, one that desperately tried to swat away at the greatest void strung around us both. Stars turned to lines, the shadows swooping past my helmet, field of view, in almost random directions. It was sickening and terrifying, and I hoped to God I'd be able to correct this move before I got out of control. But all that came to a second to the monster was clinging to my suit. At some point, he crawled around in such a way that I got a good look at him. The first in a few days. It was up close. Personal. Even with the helmet glass between us, I could make out such stark and startling details that I momentarily froze in terror, aware only vaguely of the pilot's panicked transmissions. Jesus Christ, what the fuck is that thing? Rose, you need to get yourself stabilized. Much further will be to help you. And whatever you do, you need to know that thing isn't fucking coming aboard this shuttle. I wanted to reply, but I was busy trying to get an arm between me and Ben, who is now a profusion of jagged red crystals of varying sizes. Some as big as kitchen knives, others like sewing needles. A spacesuit's worst nightmare. A puncture wouldn't lead to immediate decompression if you're probably thinking of, but instead of a few moments at most before the air enveloping the suit dissipated, and after that, my lungs would collapse. My blood would start to boil. The water inside my eyes, nose, ears, and other soft tissue would vaporize and try to escape, like frostbite on fast forward. But punctures weren't my sole concern. I knew how to stop Ben's hands gaining a grip on the helmet. I don't know if whatever had animated him had access to all his memories, but Ben sure as shit knew how to remove a helmet from the exterior. So all my focus went on keeping his nasty little fingers away from my neck. A puncture would still leave me enough time to return to the shuttle, but with no helmet, I'd be doomed to a very painful death. So I fought the best I could, knowing everything hinged on me pushing him away. But Ben was lithe and insectile, constantly slipping out of whatever reach I could got close to giving him a good shove. His fingers could easily find purchase on the suit and its many little grabbles. I was basically wielding an oven glove that offered no dexterity and had a hope of shaking him off the usual way. But I did have something on my side. Inertia. The whole time we were spinning furiously, and that the rotational force was just about the only thing trying to peel the two of us apart. So far, I'd been fighting it. Why? I realized the moment I had one option left, so I jammed half thrusters on his side to make a nearly out of control spin much, much worse. Normally, an uncontrollable spin is one of those nightmare scenarios any astronaut dreads. Humans are irregularly shaped, and once you start rotating along more than one axis, apparently more force is likely just to make it worse. Correcting takes huge amount of experience and insight, and even then, there's no guarantee you can stop it. More likely, it is that by the time you figure out what you need to do, the rotational force will have you on the brink of unconsciousness, and from there, death is just a stone's thrown away. For me, it was the only chance I had, so I accelerated the spin, and kept accelerating, holding the button down until the two forces at play pulled Ben's further and further towards the front of the suit. That's where inertia wanted us. Two objects in near symmetry, ready to break off in opposite directions at any point. Ben held on longer than I did. At some point, my limbs went weak, my vision darkened, and my arms fell to the side, no longer able to fight the monster off. But then it took everything Ben had just to cling onto me and could no longer attack or fumble in my helmet. Eventually, he had to give in as the spin grew faster and faster, and the forces trying to separate us grew too strong. It was like every roller coaster that I'd been on merged onto one. It ramped up to 11. The last thing I remembered before I lost consciousness was the sight of Ben's monstrous face being flung up into the void. I came to aboard the shovel. Several men and women cried around me. Jesus Christ, you're a lucky son of a bitch. I groaned and made eyes towards the person who had spoken. It sounded like the pilot, nice to put on the face of the voice. I don't feel lucky, I gasped. You spun right towards us. We were already suited and on our way, timed up well. That suit was riddled with holes. Any later, and we wouldn't be able to catch you and get you into safety. As it is, pal, you're going home. Medical check shows no reissues. I think you're gonna be okay. Where's Ben? The people who were around me should have finally looked before one of them realizing. Benjamin Whiteley, the other astronaut on board? Is that who was attacking you? I nodded. Well, he's gone, they replied. If that really was your colleague, well, we're really sorry. I feel like there's a story we're missing. I'll catch up when I'm feeling better, I coughed. Whatever happened to him. He'll be re-entering Earth's atmosphere in the next hour. The pilot replied. What then, I asked. The pilot thought for a second. Human body on entry? They go in flames. Immolation. Alright, y'all. That was a new thing that we tried today. Was it good or bad? Who knows? All I know is that I'm just trying things now. I don't know. I feel like my content has gotten really stale recently. So I was like, you know what? Fuck it. Why don't I just try something new? You know what I mean? But, with that being said, thank you all so very much for watching. If you want more shit like that, just tell me. You know what I mean? And I'll be sure to do much more of it. With that being said, thank you guys for watching. Watch Find 2 of VOD, mate. Just follow or sub whichever one you're on. Remember, get to 500 followers on Twitch or 500 subs on YouTube. Your Moz gameplay an entire fucking stream. Good for y'all, bad for me. With that being said, thank you to anyone who chat and talked. Thank you to anyone who didn't. I saw y'all. Of course, sleep well. Have a wonderful senior night. I will see you all tomorrow with actual regular gameplay. With that being said, thank you all so very much for watching. I will talk to y'all later. And of course, peace y'all.